Good evening. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the August 3rd, 2020 Zoning Hearing Master hearing. My name is Susan Finch, and I'll be presiding as the hearing officer tonight. Let me start by introducing Mr. Brian Grady to my left of the Development Services Department, who will go over any changes we have to tonight's agenda. Mr. Grady.
Good evening again. For the record, Brian Grady, Hillsborough County Development Services. We have no changes on tonight's published agenda, so I'll go through the published withdrawals and continuances on page 4 of the agenda. First item is item A1, Major Mod Application 20-0046. This application has been withdrawn from the Zoning Hearing Master process. Item A2, RZ-PD 20-0093. This application has been withdrawn from the Zoning Hearing Master process. Item A3, Major Mod 20-0104. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the September 29th, 2020 Zoning Hearing Master hearing. Item A4, Rezoning Standard 20-0149. This application is withdrawn from the hearing process. Item A5, Rezoning Plan Development 20-0299. This application is withdrawn from the hearing process. Item A6, Rezoning Standard 20-0357. This application is withdrawn from the hearing process. Item A7, Rezoning Standard 20-0367. This application out of order to be heard and has been continued to the September 29th, 2020 Zoning Hearing Master hearing. Item A8, Major Mod Application 20-0399. This application has been withdrawn from the hearing process. Item A9, Major Mod Application 20-0568. This application has been withdrawn from the Zoning Hearing Master process. And item A10, Rezoning PD 20-0589. This application has been withdrawn from the Hearing Master process. That concludes all withdrawals and continuances.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Grady. I appreciate it. Let me start by going over our procedures tonight. Tonight's items require a public hearing be held before the Zoning Hearing Master prior to a final decision, which is made by the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners. I'll conduct the hearing as the Zoning Hearing Master this evening and render a recommendation on each application 15 business days following tonight's hearing. That recommendation is then sent to the Board of County Commissioners for their final decision. Our hearing tonight is informal. I'll ask questions related to the direct testimony presented tonight. I'll call on question witnesses as I deem appropriate, and will decide all questions of procedure. Irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious evidence will be excluded. Any part of evidence may be received in written form, and all testimony must be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used for the purpose of supplementing or explaining other evidence, but shall not be sufficient in and of itself to support a finding by me unless it would be admissible over objection in a civil action. Our order of presentation for tonight's agenda items are as follows. Mr. Grady of the Development Services Department will provide a brief introduction of each agenda item. We'll then start with the applicant. The applicant and their team will have 15 minutes total for their presentation. We'll then turn back to the Development Services staff member, their planner that was assigned the case to go over the department's findings. We'll then turn to the Planning Commission, who will have 5 minutes to present their report on consistency with the comprehensive plan. Then we'll turn to proponents, anyone who would like to speak in favor of an application. Total proponent presentation time, 15 minutes. The same is true when we turn to opposition. Total opposition presentation for everyone is 15 minutes. We'll then go back to county staff, who will have 5 minutes to address any items, issues, changes that they may want to make based on tonight's testimony. And then finally, we'll go back to the applicant, who will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. 15 minutes for proponents and opponents is a total time. We will, when each case is called, when it's that time in the hearing, we will determine how many people want to speak. And then I will have either the clerk apportion that 15 minutes per person, or if you want to designate a single speaker, that's often a more efficient use of your time. When you come up to the podium, or if you are speaking virtually, if you could always start by giving me your name and address for the record. And then when you're finished, if you could please, if you're here in person, if you could sign in with Elise, she's with the clerk's office, and you'd sign in with your name, address, and the application number that you're speaking of to make sure that we have that accurate for the record. Let me start with, now go to Mr. Clark of the County Attorney's Office, who is appearing virtually, and he'll explain to you the legal requirements for oral argument, which governs your participation at the Board of County Commissioners meeting. Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Tonight's public hearing is the first step of a two-step rezoning process. This hearing is the time for rezoning applicants and interested parties to present evidence and testimony. Any evidence presented tonight will become a complete factual record of each application, and no additional evidence can be introduced after the closing of each application. The second step of the rezoning process is a public meeting before the Board of County Commissioners, where the board will take a decision on each application heard tonight. Tonight's applications are scheduled to be heard by the board at its October 13th, 2020 land use meeting. When considering applications, the board will only review the record created at tonight's hearing and the recommendation made by the hearing master for each application. The hearing master will file a recommendation for each application heard tonight on August 24th. Any party of record wishing to address the board at its public meeting must execute and submit a request for oral argument form explaining why oral argument is necessary. Request for oral argument must be responsive to the hearing master's recommendation. Therefore, such request cannot be filed until after the hearing master has submitted her recommendation to the county on August 24th. Following this date, any party wishing to address the board at its public meeting will have 10 days to submit a request for oral argument to the clerk of the Board of County Commissioners. Therefore, for tonight's applications, if you wish to address the board at its October 13th land use meeting, you must file your request for oral argument between August 24th and the close of business on September 3rd. While the board is not required to hear oral argument at its public meeting, the board can elect to hear oral argument from a party of record. A party of record is an individual who fits into at least one of the following four categories. First, someone who is present tonight and presents testimony or documentary evidence. Second, an individual who is certified by the U.S. Postal Service as having been mailed notice of tonight's hearing. Third, an individual who submitted documentary evidence to the master file at least 2 business days prior to tonight's hearing. Or fourth, an individual who submitted documentary evidence by proxy at tonight's hearing. Should the board elect to hear oral argument, parties of record will be eligible to address the board if their requests for oral argument are responsive to the hearing master's recommendation, and if they clearly set forth why oral argument is necessary to address at least one of the 4 outstanding issues that are laid out in Section 10.03.04E of the Land Development Code. If the board elects to hear oral argument, the content of that argument shall be limited to the content of the testimony and other evidence submitted verbally or in writing to the hearing master tonight. It is the role of the County Attorney's Office to ensure that only individuals who have met these requirements are allowed to speak before the board, and to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is introduced or allowed at the board's public meeting. For these reasons, please make sure that all information you wish the board to consider at public meeting is entered tonight's record. Thank you.
Appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, all testimony must be under oath. So if you plan to speak tonight, could you please stand and raise your right hand? As well as if you plan to speak virtually, if you could please stand and raise your right hand. We're going to pull everybody up on the grid to show it, and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you so much. Please be seated. Mr. Grady, if you could please call the first case.
The first item on tonight's agenda item C1 is rezoning standard 20-0371. The applicant is David Wright of TSP Companies Incorporated. The request is a rezone from agricultural single-family conventional 1 to residential single-family conventional 6, RSC 6. Tanya Chappella will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, I am David Wright, president of TSP Companies. Our address is P.O. Box 1016, Tampa, Florida 33601. Tonight, I'm presenting a request to rezone a 4.7 acre parcel of land from ASC 1 to RSC 6. Property is located on the west side of South Kingsway Road, approximately 800 feet south of Wheeler Road. Environmental Protection Commission staff confirm there are no wetlands located on the subject property, nor is it mapped as significant wildlife habitat by Hillsborough County. Future land use designation is R4, and the subject property is located within the Brandon Community Plan area and the urban service area and is planned to connect the public water and sewer service. The adjacent properties to the north are zoned ASC1 and are developed with single-family conventional homes. Adjacent lands to the west and to the east across South Kingsway Road are zoned RSC6 and developed accordingly. And the adjacent property to the south is the North Brandon Park, which is publicly owned and also zoned ASC1. The request to rezone the subject property is infill development based on the overall development pattern of the surrounding area that is developed predominantly as RSC6, along with some RSC2 and RSC3 zone properties. Access to South Kingsway Road will be evaluated at the time of plat, site construction plan review for consistency with the LDC's requirements for access management, and transportation staff raised no objection to the proposed zoning. As stated in the Planning Commission staff report, Planning Commission staff reviewed the request and found it to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and noted the following. The request meets the intent of Objective 1 and Policies 1.3 and 1.4 by promoting growth within the urban service area and is compatible with the predominant character of the existing single-family residential at comparable densities. The request meets the intent of Objective 12.1 and 16, requiring new infill development to be consistent with the general character of the surrounding area. And the request is consistent with the Brandon Community Plan Goal 5, Strategies 3 and 4 and 5D, with single-family residential dwellings on quarter-acre lots within the suburban character district. The proposed rezoning has been deemed to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and has been found to be compliant with the Land Development Code. Based on the documentation within the public record and my testimony here tonight, I respectfully request your recommendation of approval, and I'm here to answer questions.
I don't have any at this time, but thank you. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office, I appreciate it. Development Services, please.
I believe you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So, this is Tanya Chapella, Development Services. The applicant already presented this case pretty accurately. I would just add a couple of things. In regard to compatibility, the surrounding area is zone RC6, RC2, and RC3 residential single family and mainly developed single family conventional dwelling. The staff finds that the proposed zone district RZ6 is compatible with the surrounding development and zoning pattern. We find that the proposed report is approvable. We did not get any opposition from transportation or the EPC staff. So again, we find the proposed report is approvable. I'm glad to answer your questions if you have any.
Much for your testimony. Planning Commission, please.
Good evening, Jawan Haley, Planning Commission. The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject property from agricultural single-family conventional 1 to residential single-family conventional 6 for the purpose of increasing the allowable density on the subject site from 4 single-family dwellings to 28 single-family dwellings. The property is designated residential 4 on the future land use map. It's located within the limits of the Brandon Community Plan. It is located within the urban service area. The proposal meets the intent of Objective 1 and Policies 1.3 and 1.4 of the future land use elements of the comprehensive plan by providing growth within the urban service area that meets the minimum density requirement of 4 dwelling units per gross acre. The proposal meets the compatibility requirements of Policy 1.4 as the predominant character of the area is single-family residential at comparable densities. The proposal also meets the intent of Objective 16 and its accompanying Policy 16.2, 16.3, 16.8, and 16.10 that require new development and infill and redevelopment to be compatible to the surrounding area in character, lot size, and density. In this case, the proposal is consistent with the general character of the surrounding area, which is low-density single-family residential. Goal 12 and Objective 12-1 of the community design component within the future land use element requires new developments to recognize the existing community and be designated to relate to and be compatible with the predominant character of the surrounding area. In this case, the surrounding land use pattern, again, is medium to low density single family residential. and the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area. The proposed development is also consistent with the Brandon Community Plan, specifically Goal 5, Strategies 3, 4, and 5D, which require each of the character districts to allow a specific development pattern. The subject site is in the suburban character district and meets the requirements of the district designation by providing single-family dwellings on quarter-acre lots or less. Based on these considerations, the Planning Commission finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. Thank you.
Testimony, appreciate it. At this time, we'll call for anyone that would like to speak in support. Anyone in support of this application? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? All right, Mr. Grady, anything further?
Nothing further from staff.
All right, Mr. Wright, anything else? All right, thank you for your time and testimony. We'll close rezoning STD 20-0371 and go to the next case.
The next item, agenda item C2, rezoning standard 20-0599. The applicant is Bonnie K. Rubishaw. The request is to rezone from agricultural rural to commercial intensive with restrictions. Stephen Beachy with county staff will provide staff a recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Master. For the record, Bonnie Rubishaw, RCS, 1723 Southern Drive in Brandon. What we have here tonight is a piece of property just under 1 acre at 0.89 acres. The site is located on the west side of US 301, approximately a third of a mile south of Honey Road. It's located on the west side. My client is proposing to rezone the site from AR to CIR in order to relocate his business from Sable Park, where he currently leases office space. The proposal is for construction of a 4,900 square foot building, which will house his business. The company installs security systems and stocks inventory in the rear of the building. The technicians arrive in the morning and are dispatched to the work sites, but due to occasional parking of company vehicles, outdoor storage is required and thereby requires the CI zoning district. The business itself is classified as an electrical contractor's office with associated accessory warehouse. Now, in order to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood, we're proposing a CIR in order to, first of all, restrict the uses to CG with accessory warehouse only. Outdoor storage would allow only company vehicle parking, and the hours of operation would be restricted from 8 to 5:30 p.m., which is consistent with office use. The property is currently zoned AR and is located in the CMU 12 land use category. The general vicinity of this portion of 301 is transitioning primarily from agricultural to commercial. Excuse me. These commercial uses, which include a heavy-duty truck sales company, an electric sign company, an auto salvage yard, and other commercial operations with business vehicle parking, all of which allow open storage. The majority of uses approved include CI, CG, as well as manufacturing. The CI uses approved consists of 15,700 square feet. Now, the CMU 12 plan category encourages commercial development of the proposed neighborhood serving type, and both traffic and noise impacts along 301 at this location would not be conducive to future single-family development. The proposed use, we feel, would be very well suited to this site. Use requested is consistent with the surrounding area and compatible with the adjacent uses, with the proposed restrictions as in the required buffers. I am going to submit into the record a packet of exhibits for you to review. What the pictures show basically is to substantiate everything that I said as far as compatibility.
Thank you. Awesome, thanks. Over here, Bonnie. Right here.
In closing, we do come to you with an approval or a recommendation of approval from both Planning and Growth Management as well as the Planning Commission, which support the request with conditions which are included in your backup. In addition, the adjacent property owners to the south and west do not object to the proposed zoning. We are in agreement with all the conditions recommended by staff and do hope that you will also support the request. I am available for any questions you might have.
My main question was, what was the proposed use? And you've explained that.
Okay.
And then the only thing I just wanted to clarify for the record is what precisely are the uses that aren't permitted in CG that you need the CI for with the restriction?
Well, basically what the conditions are doing is allowing CG uses only. It's worded in a it's a little bit confusing the way it's worded.
It is. I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah.
It's the accessory warehousing and the outdoor storage. Those are the two uses that exceed the CG limitations that you need the CI. I guess maybe I'll rephrase the question.
That's correct. Well,
Okay.
the only reason we needed the CI was because it had accessory parking. It's outdoor storage. Otherwise, we would have asked for CG. But, and I know the way it's worded is somewhat confusing, but essentially, you couldn't put anything there except CG uses with outdoor storage.
Right, correct. Okay.
Maybe staff can clarify that as well, but that's my understanding of the intent of the word.
Right. The intent is that those two uses exceed the CG limitations, and that's the reason for the restriction.
Correct.
Understood. Okay. Thank you for your testimony. If you could please sign it. All right. Development Services, Mr. Beachy.
Good evening, Steve Beachy, Development Services. Well, just to start off, I believe that is exactly accurate. The latest discussion about why the CI designation with restrictions was applied to this parcel because of the commercial vehicle parking. The request is to rezone a parcel totaling approximately 0.89 acres from AR to commercial intensive with restrictions. Parcel is located on the west side of US 301, just north of Jerry Lane and US 301. The comprehensive plan designation is CMU 12. The site is located in the urban service area and we subject to all applicable regulations for the urban service area. US 301 is under the jurisdiction of the Florida Department of Transportation and offered no objections to this request. Transportation staff indicated that the use would, the subject parcel would increase 430 average daily trips and 10 trips in the AM peak hour and 43 in the PM peak hour. Subject area is a mix of agricultural, residential, commercial, industrial zoning districts. AR to the north and to the south, and to the west is RSC 6. And across the street on US 301 is a retention pond owned by the Florida Department of Transportation. But the immediate area in the larger area is transitioning to industrial, non-residential uses. The applicant, as stated, has addressed any incompatibility by offering several restrictions, especially for the parking of commercial vehicles. Based on the above consideration, staff finds the request approval with the following restrictions. Uses shall be limited to those CG zoning district uses also permissible in the CI zoning district, plus accessory warehousing and accessory outdoor storage for parking of commercial vehicles. Hours of operation shall be from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. And I'm available for questions.
Time. Thank you. Planning Commission, please.
Juwan Haley, Planning Commission. The subject site is designated Community Mixed Use 12 on the future land use map. The site is located within the limits of the East Lake Orient Park Community Plan. It is located within the urban service area. The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject site from agricultural rural to commercial intensive with restrictions to allow for the development of a 4,900 square foot electrical contractor's office and an associated accessory warehouse and outdoor storage space for parking company vehicles only. Uses would be restricted to commercial general uses with outdoor storage for the parking of company vehicles only. The proposal does meet the intent of objective 1. As it is located within the urban service area, the proposal meets the intent of the requirements for the urban service area, where 80% of the growth is directed. The applicant is requesting well and septic utilities in the urban service area, as this portion of US Highway 301 is not serviced by any public utilities. Well and septic are discouraged in the urban service area. However, per policy 1.5, there is a procedure administered through the Department of Development Services which allows for either a variance of an administrative waiver at the site development stage should no public utilities be available. The site is designated CMU 12. Therefore, it is not subject to commercial locational criteria. The surrounding area is in transition from agricultural uses to more commercial and light industrial uses. Current existing uses in the area include electric sign installation company, along with auto repair, salvage, and truck sales and storage. The proposed use is therefore compatible with the surrounding area as defined in policies 1.4 and 16.10 in the future land use element. Planning Commission staff recognizes that the parcel is located in a transitional area. The applicant has agreed to appropriate site buffering and mitigation techniques such as limited hours and the installation of non-glare security lighting to limit any adverse impacts on surrounding uses. The applicant is proposing to design the site with all appropriate buffers and screening requirements that are required by the Land Development Code. Thus, the proposal is consistent with Objective 9 and policies 9.2, 16.2, 16.3, and 17.7, which require appropriate mitigation and buffering of different land uses that are adjacent to each other. The applicant states that there are non-delineated wetlands on site. As this is a standard rezoning, Planning Commission is not able to review a site plan, nor are comments from the Environmental Protection Commission available at this stage of the process. If and when wetlands are identified on site, the applicant and all regulatory parties involved must ensure adherence to Objective 13 and Policy 13.3 of the Comprehensive Plan regarding the allowable density and or intensity regarding wetlands. Goal 9 in Policy 9.1-1 of the Community Design Component in the future land use element provides policy direction about appropriate commercial design standards. It states that new commercial development should recognize the existing community character and be designed in a way that is compatible with the established commercial character of an area. The applicant is encouraged to adhere to the policy at the time of site development. The request is consistent with the economic development objectives of the East Lake Orient Park Community Plan, which encourages businesses along US Highway 301 north between the Tampa Bypass Canal and Hillsborough Avenue, and which supports rezoning to business commercial uses for accomplishing this objective. The subject site is located between the Tampa Bypass Canal and Hillsborough Avenue on US Highway 301 North area. And the proposal for commercial use in the area is consistent with the community plan. Based on these considerations, the Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. Thank you.
Anyone that would like to speak in support of this application? Any proponents? Seeing none, anyone in opposition? All right, no one. Mr. Grady, anything further?
Nothing further from staff.
Ms. Rubishaw, anything else?
Nothing else.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. With that, then, we will close rezoning 20-0599 and go to the next case.
The next item, agenda item D1, major mod application 19-1173. The applicant is Robert H. Goodell and Phelps Dunbar LLP. The request is for a major modification to existing plan development. Tanya Chappella with county staff will provide staff recommendation as proposed by the applicant. I will also note that after Ms. Chappella provides her presentation, James Ratliff with the transportation staff will need to speak. He had some revisions to speak to that I will hand out into the record tonight, but it will speak to those revisions. It's a supplemental comment sheet in response to evidence submitted by an attorney in opposition to the request. So he'll speak to that, but I'll hand that out now. So you have a
Okay.
copy of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Daryl McAteer of Phelps Dunbar LLP, 100 South Ashley Drive, Suite 2000, Tampa, Florida 33602. On behalf of Rob Goodell and Phelps Dunbar LLP, representing the property owner K-Tech Inc. for major modification 19-1173 to PD 13-0491. The folio number is 073834-1512. Our team tonight includes myself and Devin Damon from Phelps, Ryan Renardo, project engineer from the Foresight Group, who will discuss the site plan, and Mike Razor of Razor Transportation Consulting, who will discuss transportation and trip generation. And their credentials are of record. Mr. Alan Kahana, owner of K-Tech, is also with us tonight. The property is located at the northeast corner of South Gornto Lake Road and Cardera Drive. The site is zoned PD with commercial general uses with an underlying future land use classification of suburban mixed use 6. Major modification seeks to increase the FAR from 0.11 to 0.20 and increase the maximum building area from 7,500 square feet to 12,500 square feet. At this time, and I received it this evening, I'd like to enter into evidence a letter from an architect indicating the capacity for children for the as-of-right sized childcare center. Would that be all right?
Yes, you can submit it to the clerk's office. If you only have one copy, I'd prefer you do that. Oh, then submit away. So I will remind you, though, you are under 15 minutes. You've got 13 minutes now.
Okay.
Your presentation
I'll move
time.
right along. Okay. The original PD indicates subject access to the subject site from Cardera Drive, and there is already a curb cut in place. I won't put my hand on it, but you can see it from Cardera Drive into the subject site, headed north. The original PD does call for interconnectivity between the parcels, the commercial parcel and the residential parcels of the PD. Staff has indicated they will speak to that, and we agree the interconnectivity should be maintained and the Cardera Drive access should be maintained. We agree, subject to EPC approval, the applicant has agreed to fund the second access to the site directly off of South Gornto Lake Road. My favorite thing to say during a zoning application is we are in agreement with all staff conditions as they are stated in the staff report. Staff has found the application to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the commercial general zoning category. County staff stated the proposed increased intensity of commercial uses is reasonable. The proposed modification will not create a significant impact on the residential component of the PD. The request is consistent with the approved uses and will be keeping the character of the surrounding area. And we would request approval. And I have one more item I'd like to move in is the covenants, codes, and restrictions for the Mariposa development, which was built upon this PD. And so
Okay.
I would just like to move them into evidence.
Okay.
Relevant as to the interconnectivity of the parcel.
All right.
Hello, my name is Ryan Renardo with Foresight Group. Address is 10150 Highland Manor Drive, Suite 210, Tampa, Florida, 33610.
Can you sign in, please? Sorry.
Mr. McAteer, you need to sign in with the clerk.
I'm
Please
a
continue.
registered professional engineer in the state of Florida, registration number 77049. I have a presentation here. I don't know if we can make it active on the screen so you can see. Want to start by showing you an aerial of the site. The project site is located in the northeast corner of Gornto Lake Road and Cardera Drive. Surrounded on the east side is a wetland compensating storage pond. To the north is a bunch of wetlands and floodplain areas. There's also a wetland sliver that runs down the west side of the project site between the site and Gornto Lake Road. Cardera Drive is located on the south side of the project. This is an excerpt from the original PD, which is actually the PD plan. And what I wanted to show you here is the site, the PD is predominantly for single family uses with one out parcel carved out for commercial uses. The red arrows indicate the existing vehicular ingress and egress points shown on the PD plan. We had originally wanted to get rid of the northwest access point, but based on some coordination with county staff, we've agreed to keep that access point, so there's no change in access points proposed from the current PD plan. This is the original site plan that we prepared. As you can see here, we're using the existing driveway entrance off of Cardera Drive. No additional driveway access to Gornto Lake Road. I got the building in the middle of the site and play area along the west property line. What you'll see is the proposed site plan is substantially the same as this, except we add an additional driveway to make the connection to Gornto Lake Road. Some quick logistics about this project. The capacity of the school is limited to 200 students. The hours of operation are between 6:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. There's no defined pickup and drop-off times. So pickup or drop-off typically occurs between 6:30 and 9 a.m. and pickup typically occurs between 4:30 and 6 p.m. So it's substantially different than an elementary school where there's a defined 30-minute plus or minus window for pickup and drop-off time. So it's not like all 200 students arrive at the same time and get picked up at the same time. I'll turn it over to Mike Razor.
Good evening. For the record, Michael Razor with Razor Transportation Consulting at 19046 Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, number 308, Tampa 33647. I'm a registered professional engineer, number 60919, with a specialty in traffic engineering, with 23 years of experience, and I have been sworn. I performed various traffic studies for this project with the final traffic study report issued on March 4th of 2020. The PD is currently entitled for 362 single-family detached residential dwellings and 7,500 square feet of commercial floor space, which allows for the development of a 7,500 square foot daycare facility, which was presumed in our study to provide for up to 214 students, where this number of students was based on an allocation of 35 square feet per student sourced from the Florida statutes, where it is understood that this assumption may be slightly high due to the concept of usable floor area, or usable floor space rather, pursuant to the context of facility licensure, where some portions of the facility do not count towards student allocations such as hallways and bathrooms. Thus, for the purposes of the traffic study, the factor of 35 square feet per student should be viewed as a general rule of thumb, noting that we agree with staff that the purpose of establishing this baseline number of students is to evaluate an order of magnitude level comparison of trip generation for pre and post zoning conditions, where the specific value of the currently approved development, including student count, is applicable only to that comparison of pre and post zoning trip generation, and completely immaterial in regard to the findings of the traffic operation analysis, which was the focus of the study. The subject PD modification would allow for an increase in the commercial floor space to 12,500 square feet, which is intended for the development of a daycare facility with conditions to limit enrollment to 200 students. The residential entitlements of the PD remain unchanged at 362 single-family dwelling units. However, since the residential portion of the project has been built out with a total of 189 single-family detached residential dwellings, no additional residential units are reasonably expected, That is, without raising the existing home sites that were all constructed within the recent several years and redeveloping the site. The planned modification to the PD entitlements, assuming a baseline of 214 students and 362 residential units, and a proposed condition of 200 students and an actually constructed 189 residential units, results in a decrease in trip generation for the overall PD by 1,586 daily trips, a 37% decrease, with 134 fewer AM peak hour trips, that's a 31% decrease, and 173 fewer PM peak hour trips, a 33% decrease. Considering only the commercial portion of the PD, which is the subject of this rezoning request, the planned modification to the entitlements are estimated to result in a decrease in trip generation by 58 daily trips, with 11 fewer AM and PM peak hour trips, about 6% across the board. And as I initially referenced, the purpose of this trip generation comparison was to provide an order of magnitude comparison, which identified that for the commercial portion of the PD, with the baseline of 214 students, there is a minor decrease in trip generation, which generally indicates that the current and proposed trip generation estimates are similar in regard to order of magnitude. With the consideration of usable floor space, the baseline student count would be somewhat reduced. However, consideration of usable floor space does not materially affect the finding that the current and proposed trip generation estimates would still be similar in regard to order of magnitude for the commercial entitlements. The consideration of the existing 189 home sites versus entitlements for 362 home sites is irrelevant, as A, this rezoning associated only with the commercial entitlements, and B, as previously mentioned, to increase the residential unit count, the existing home sites would need to be raised and redeveloped, for which the likeliness and thus reasonableness of such an assumption in the context of the traffic evaluation is suspect and questionable at best. As initially referenced, the trip generation comparison, while provided for general informational purposes, is immaterial in regard to the findings of the traffic operational analysis, which was the focus of the traffic study, which identified acceptable operating conditions in regard to safety and efficiency as measured by quantifiable transportation performance standards. The traffic operational analysis, which was conducted pursuant to both Hillsborough County and industry standards, identified that all existing and proposed project site driveway connections for the PD are anticipated to operate acceptably in consideration of Hillsborough County transportation performance standards, with all traffic movements anticipated to operate at level service D or better, and all volume to capacity ratios anticipated to be no greater than 0.37, which indicates that all traffic movements have adequate capacity to operate safely. Vehicular queuing on Cardera Drive was also evaluated, and it was found that for typical AM and PM peak hour conditions, post-development, queues on Cardera are not anticipated to block or otherwise adversely impact the operation of the daycare's driveway connection to Cardera Drive. In regard to exiting the development from Cardera Drive onto Gornto Lake Road, the maximum anticipated queue for typical AM and PM post-development peak hour conditions was identified as 50 feet, as compared to the daycare's driveway connection to Cardera Drive being located at 175 feet from Gornto Lake Road, more than 3 times the extent of the queuing. Thus, outbound queuing on Cardera Drive is not anticipated to block access to the daycare driveway. In regard to entering the residential portion of the development, there is a gated entry feature located approximately 140 feet past the center line of the proposed daycare driveway, with a call box located approximately 70 feet in advance of the gate. This distance provides stacking for approximately 5 vehicles from the gate, where it was found that there is only 1/100% probability that the queue formed at the subject gate would extend past and thus block access to the daycare driveway, and thus is not reasonably anticipated to occur. Furthermore, the call box associated with the gated entry was found to meet the minimum separation requirement relative to the daycare access connection to Cardera Drive pursuant to the Hillsborough County Transportation Technical Manual, specification TD-9. In regard to site access, the subject PD modification does not propose revisions to access connections, as development of the commercial portion of the PD continues to include connections to both Gornto Lake Road and Cardera Drive, consistent with the currently approved PD. New site access related turn lanes are found to not be warranted on either Gornto Lake Road or Cardera Drive at the daycare site access connections, and the existing turn lanes onto Gornto Lake Road providing access to Cardera Drive were confirmed to be of adequate length to accommodate post-development traffic conditions. Now, shifting gears a bit, There was a comment earlier regarding staff, Mr. James Ratliff speaking to the record in regard to not late, but later in the process, introduced testimony from the Mariposa Homeowners Association attorney, Mr. Matt Newton, which includes alternative trip generation calculations. So I'm going to address those right now. Specifically in regard to consideration of the full 362 residential unit count and consideration of the daycare trip generation based on square footage rather than student count. And I've already addressed the residential trip generation issue in detail, again, concluding that the potential for developing any additional residences and thus the reasonableness of that assumption in the context of the traffic evaluation is suspect and questionable. In regard to evaluating the trip generation of the daycare based on square footage for one scenario, that being for the current entitlements, and then comparing that resulting value to another scenario where trip generation was evaluated based on number of students, that is, for the proposed zoning condition, is contemptibly inappropriate. Such a comparison ignores both the implicit and explicit details associated with each of the data sets comprising the square footage-based trip rates and the student-based trip rates, resulting in an egregiously misleading apples to oranges type of comparison. Furthermore, and especially given the level of detail implied by Mr. Newton's analysis, application of trip rates based on square footage are inherently inappropriate when student count values are on the table, as pursuant to the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Handbook, which is the fundamental underlying resource for trip generation. The most directly causal independent variable is to be used for trip generation purposes, which for the daycare land use is students. It is because of these nuances that trip generation calculations are typically undertaken by licensed professionals with the related education, training, and experience to accurately and faithfully do so. With that, I'd like to just state that I do agree with the conditions per the county staff report and am available for questions. Thank you.
I do have questions. I'm not sure if the gentleman that's in charge of the presentation would like me to ask them to him or you, whatever you'd like me to do. I just have basic questions just to make sure I understand the application in total.
R2 transportation.
My only question, while you're up here, my only question about transportation was the ITE standard for the calculation of childcare. How is that, the trip generation for that? How is that calculated?
The trip generation manual contains data sets for many land use categories, including a daycare. Within that data set, there are several, in this case, I believe 3 independent variables to choose from based on what information the analyst has on hand. The guiding document, there's the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, but there's also a handbook which lays out the procedures to follow to perform a trip generation estimate. And within that handbook, there is language that states that those variables that are most directly causal for the variation in trip end should be used. So in the case of a school, case of a daycare, those number of students are what directly causes the variation in traffic generation based on the change in size of that particular independent variable. So in a case where we know what the student count would be, it is most appropriate to use that rather than square footage or the other possible independent variables. And I think that to speak to my point, it is very inappropriate to compare apples and oranges in the sense that we use in Mr. Newton's letter, where it compared based on one independent variable for the existing condition and another independent variable for the proposed condition, because there are complexities within the data set. So in my professional opinion, that would be a very inappropriate level of analysis.
Thank you very much. That answers my question. I had a question about the intention of the modification, if you could just clarify that for me. The original approval for 7,500 square feet was for CN uses, not just a daycare center, for all CN uses. Is that correct?
Several were excluded.
Well, and then there were some prohibited uses.
Yes.
But not just only for a childcare center, correct?
That's correct.
So it's the intent of the modification to increase it to 12,500 square feet for a daycare center. Is that correct? All right. And nowhere in the conditions do I see where it previously identified the maximum number of students. That's the issue?
When you say nowhere in the conditions, which conditions are you
The
speaking
approved
to?
zoning conditions as they stand today don't specify a maximum number of students if the property were to be developed with a daycare center. Is that correct? You should answer on the record.
I apologize. I was looking down as you were speaking.
That's okay.
Give me the
If you
question
could just
one more
answer the question on the record. Some folks from your team are answering for you, but they're not on the microphone.
you can ask me the question.
Absolutely. So in the existing zoning conditions as they're approved today, they do not specify the maximum number of students that would be permitted in a daycare center. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay. So that number of, I was just handed a revised, and we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, a revised traffic agency traffic comment from Mr. Ratliff of the county. He identifies 214 students, and I'm presuming that that's based on what your transportation engineer is asserting is a prior assumption based on square footage or something. Someone came up with a number of 214 students.
At one point, yes, the calculation of 214 students was utilized. That has been questioned. We're not, for lack of a better word, we're not interested in the 214 anymore. We're capped at 200.
Right.
So
that number, it's
the
200 as it's proposed.
it's 200.
Okay.
So the 214, we can let that dissolve.
All right. And just to, my final question at this point is, no more residential can be built on this property. Is that your testimony?
That is in looking at the property, it's our, and I can, maybe Mr. Renardo should speak to that as well. But no, we do not believe that anything else can be built out. It's a built out property and you'd have to fill wetlands and scrape all.
It's
infrastructure.
essentially built out except for this last parcel. Is that
Except for
correct?
this parcel, yes.
Okay.
It's totally utilized.
That's all I needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We're ready for development services, please.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
This is Tanya Chapella from Development Services. I'd like to clarify that the report states on a revised request received by staff on January 6th. So based on that document, the applicant is seeking a major modification to a plan development PV 13-0491 as to increase the maximum floor area ratio from 0.11 to 0.20 and to increase the maximum building area from 7,500 to 12,500 square feet. And it has not been changed in regards to the approved uses. So it's my understanding that commercial neighborhood uses are permitted, excluding drive-through restaurants, gas stations, major motor vehicle repair, and freestanding taverns, bars, lounge, nightclubs, and dance halls. So I would ask the applicant to confirm for the record if this is accurate, because this case has been the subject of several changes over the whole process. So I would like to have that confirmation, because we are not, or at least the report is not being based on one single use for childcare centers, even though that is the purpose of the all this project, and maybe the transportation staff and the transportation analysis is based on that single use. The zoning analysis is based on more than one use. So the approved development plan PV 13-0491 allows a maximum of 362 single-family dwelling units, and those 7,500 square feet for those uses approved by that PV. The proposed PV area is currently vacant and is located on the northeast intersection of Mortal Lake Road and Cordero Drive. The parcel is 1.45 acres in size, and its future land use classification is suburban mixed use 6. No other modifications to the current PV are proposed. The applicant has not requested any variations to the land development code for parking and loading, nor landscaping, buffering, fences, or walls. So conditions number 1 and number 7 are being amended to increase the maximum floor space from 7,500 to 12,500 square feet, and to allow an increased maximum floor area ratio from 0.11 to 0.20. Development standards for the commercial area will be amended accordingly. Condition number 6 is being amended to limit the childcare center development to 200 students, and also has been amended to add the following requirements to address the increased traffic generation, access improvements, and internal circulation. The commercial site shall have 2 access points. I'm sorry, this is condition number 6.1. The commercial site shall have 2 access points, one on Gornto Lake Road and another access point on Cordero Drive. Condition number 6.2, the applicant shall construct 5 feet sidewalks along all the commercial property frontage and connect such external sidewalks to the internal commercial building. Condition number 6.3, notwithstanding anything herein or shown on the PV site plan or the contrary, bicycle and pedestrian access pedestrian access might be permitted anywhere along the PV boundary. Condition 6.4, all commercial uses on the commercial site shall be capped to 818 average daily trips, 156 a.m. peak hour trips, and 158 p.m. trips. 6.5, prior to site plan approval, the developer shall provide evidence of the right to use Cordero Drive, folio 73834.1226 as access to the commercial site. Any necessary construction activities within land not owned by the developer shall require approval agreement from other private property owners prior to the site plan submittal. Condition 6.7, notwithstanding anything shown on the site plan, the applicant is required to meet Hillsborough County Land Development Code Section 6, design standards and improvement requirements, interconnectivity requirements, and Hillsborough County Transportation Technical Manual, ETM, for all cross-access, parking, and driveway dimension requirements. 6.8, childcare center development shall comply with Hillsborough County Land Development Code, Section 61124, childcare center provisions. Additionally, condition number 10 is being amended. This condition was already satisfied when the single-family homes were developed, and it was amended to clarify the provision for utility lane in anticipation to further commercial or residential improvements. Overall, the developer shall be required to provide general access via Purity Lane only if the following circumstances exist. So, point number 1 is more than 220 lots are developed within the project. The other conditions would be direct access to Gornto Lake Road for the commercial parcel is removed pursuant to a modification of the PV via a public hearing. So the Purity Lane is not intended to be converted into a general access road unless those conditions are in the site. So in regards to utilities, the site is located within Hillsborough County Urban Service Area. Therefore, the subject property should be served by Hillsborough County Water and Wastewater Service. Transportation Review Section. Staff has no objection to this major modification, subject to conditions in this rezoning. And Mr. James Ratliff would follow my presentation to discuss this, his report, comments, and findings. In regards to the compatibility, the Suburban Mixed Use 6 Comprehensive Plan Classification allows for suburban scale neighborhood commercial projects limited to 175,000 square feet or 0.25 FAR, whichever is less than 10. The proposed 12,500 square feet of restricted commercial neighborhood uses and the increase from 0.11 to 0.2 or 20 FAR are consistent with the comprehensive plan. The commercial neighborhood districts allow for a maximum of 2.20 FAR. The proposed intensity complies with the requirements of a project located in a CN standard zoning. Also, adjacent to the PD 130491 limits approximately 1,000 feet to the south of the subject site. Along Gorton Lake Road is a 4.5 acres parcel zone IPv 289-0146. The neighboring property is approved for a 0.61 FAR, comprising 120,000 square feet of commercial entitlements limited to offices and a childcare center. The subject lot is separated from nearby single-family residential lots by wetlands and two retention ponds to the north and east. Also to the east are a clubhouse and a community pool, adding distance to residential uses. Cordero Drive and Gorton Lake Road separate the site from single-family residential uses to the south and west. The proposed addition to the building area will not intrude into the required setback, buffering, and does not entail the reduction of the required screening. The commercial development traffic impact on the Mariposa residential subdivision should be lessened by capping the project to 818 average daily trips, 156 AM peak hour trips, and 158 PM trips.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me. You're reading from Mr. Ratliff's revised traffic comments, is that correct?
That was from Ms. Aya's report with, in conversation with Mr. Ratliff. Yes, it's also the same number.
I interrupt you is because I understand that he would like to testify as well, and I would prefer that he put that information on the record regarding his revised analysis and comments, if you don't mind.
I agree with you totally. Even the above stop signs,
Excuse me, does that complete your presentation?
well, we support the case. It's approvable subject to conditions. That would be it.
I will, back to your prior comment, we will confirm with the applicant the use of the 12,500 square feet in reference to your earlier question. But at the moment, let's hear from Mr. Ratliff regarding his revised agency comments.
Hello. Good evening, Madam Hearing Officer James Ratliff with Development Services Transportation Review. So I believe Brian Grady already put into the record and provided the supplemental staff report with today's date that was based on information received from the attorney, Matt Newton, representing the Mariposa Homeowners Association, and that information we received on July 29th. Essentially, they took issue with a couple of things from our transportation staff report, and in looking at that, I did agree with a couple of those points, and so wanted to provide some clarifying information into the record. Primarily, one of the things that I did was I think that the number of residential units is a little bit of a distraction. Essentially, the applicant is not requesting a reduction in the number of trips. And so our previous transportation staff report essentially did look at a comparison of what was built out scenario under the existing rezoning, but then it compared it with a likely build out scenario instead of looking at a worst case to worst case scenario. So what I did in this revised supplemental was kind of strip away the residential component, because really those entitlements aren't changing. Can they be built? Probably not, as we've heard today, without raising the majority of the homes or filling in wetlands or things of that nature. But really, at the end of the day, what we're really trying to compare is the commercial entitlement change. So kind of focused in on that. The other part of the Mariposa Homeowners Association letter was essentially talking about using the one student per 35 square foot calculation. And that was based again on Florida statutes, but it didn't take into account that concept, as you heard earlier, of usable square footage. And part of that is because we don't know. It's based on the individual characteristics of a building. And so we think that this is close enough and gets us to essentially a place where this is essentially a small reduction in trip generation or essentially neutral. But even if it were to somehow generate a handful of extra trips, I just want to reiterate for the record that there are no operational or safety issues that we've identified that would cause that to be of concern. So, we can kind of, split those hairs to talk about exactly whether it falls slightly below, slightly above or what have you. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have a significant difference in terms of the project being able to be safely accommodated using the existing infrastructure. We did also receive something today via email that came after we wrote the supplemental report. So I just want to touch on that briefly. And essentially, I believe what they're going to do is stand up and say that it would be most appropriate to use, instead of number of students as our independent variable, use a trip generation rate per 1,000 square feet. And we do not agree with that assessment. Essentially, daycares, what generates the traffic at a daycare is the number of students. So you could run a variety of things from the standpoint of looking at an independent variable and developing a trip generation report. But when it comes down to it, what is bringing people in and making people go, or come and go, is the number of students that are there. So what you'll find is that by using a square footage assumption, you're actually generally underestimating the trip impact. So for example, I ran a 7,500 square foot analysis using the IT 10th edition. And for example, in the AM peak hour, that's assumes 83 AM peak hour trips versus the 167 by the number of students. And so what you'll see is that it's a much more accurate, I believe, analysis to say, okay, well, let's look at it from the standpoint of how many kids are in the seats, and not try to look at it an average from the smallest daycares and the largest daycares. Let's not penalize daycare providers who want to provide a lot of extra room for their children. Let's actually just analyze the amount of trips that they're generating based on how many children and school seats there are. So that's why we approached it that way. So at the end of the day, our conclusions did not change, but I just wanted to provide that little bit of additional information into the record for you.
For that, I appreciate it. All right, then with that, we'll go to the Planning Commission. Their testimony.
Jawan Haley, Planning Commission. The subject property is designated Suburban Mixed Use 6 on the future land use map. The site is located within the limits of the Brandon Community Plan and within the urban service area. The applicant requests to modify the plan development to increase the maximum intensity from 7,500 square feet with a maximum floor area ratio of 0.11 to 12,500 square feet with a maximum floor area ratio of 0.20. The site plan requests a 12,102 square foot daycare The applicant is not seeking to amend or modify either the permitted commercial neighborhood uses or the prohibited uses originally provided for in Plan Development 13-0491. The plan development was initially approved for 7,500 square feet of commercial neighborhood uses with a maximum FAR of 0.11. This excluded drive-through restaurants, gas stations, and major motor vehicle repair. Freestanding taverns, bars, lounges, nightclubs, and dance halls were also excluded. The proposed modification is consistent with the intent of the suburban mixed-use 6 future land use category. The maximum floor area ratio for the suburban mixed-use the suburban mixed-use 6 category is 0.25 FAR, allowing for a maximum intensity of 15,790 square feet. The application requests to increase the floor area ratio to 0.20, allowing for 12,500 square feet, which is below the maximum floor area ratio for the land use category. The applicant has submitted a commercial locational criteria waiver. The waiver states that the proposed project is located on Gornto Lake Road, a 4-lane corridor. The property is located north of the heavily developed commercial intersection of Bloomingdale Avenue and Gornto Lake Road. The waiver also states the previously approved uses with the prior plan development are remaining the same. The application proposes to increase the FAR to allow daycare. Daycares are identified in policy 17.1 in the future land use element as a residential support use. Residential support uses are allowable in any of the residential, commercial, and industrial land use plan categories, provided that the facility be of a design, intensity, and scale that serve the surrounding neighborhood or the non-residential development in which it occurs. It must also be compatible with the surrounding land uses and zoning. The subject property is located on a collector at the edge of a residential development within the suburban mixed-use 6 land use category. Policy 16.5 states that development of higher intensity non-residential land uses that are adjacent to established neighborhoods be restricted to collectors and arterials in locations external to neighborhoods, external to established and developing neighborhoods. The proposed development, the residential support use will be located on a collector and be external to the residential development located to the east. The modification of the plan development for this site also satisfies the intent of policy 16.3, which requires a gradual transition of intensities between different land uses for new developments to the use of professional site planning, buffering, and screening techniques and control of specific land uses. The modified plan development can serve as a transition to the residential development to the east. The proposed modification is consistent with the surrounding area's residential development pattern. The proposed use will be comparable and compatible with the surrounding area. Planning Commission staff recommends that the Hillsborough Board of County Commissioners approve the waiver to commercial locational criteria. The subject property is also located within the Brandon Community Plan boundary in the Urban General Character District. The district is intended to include mixed-use building types immediately adjacent to the urban center district designed to accommodate retail, offices, and dwellings, including row houses, townhouses, and multifamily housing. The proposed modification is consistent with the intent of the Brandon Community Plan and the Urban General District by continuing to provide for a daycare and other commercial neighborhood uses along Gornto Lake Road and on the edge of the residential development near the subject site. Based upon these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed major modification consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by the Department of Development Services. Thank you.
Is there anyone in person that would like to testify in support of the application? Anyone in support? All right, I know we have 2 people that are signed up to testify in support. The first one is David, and I apologize if I pronounced your last name wrong, Stonecki. Can't talk from the audience.
Daryl McAteer, Phelps & Dunbar LLP for the applicant. you had asked for us to clarify. You want us to do that on
Yes.
rebuttal, or?
Yeah, you can do it on rebuttal if you don't mind. We're going to go through the
We
hearing
do
as
want to
through
preserve
our
all
process.
commercial uses, as it states in 6.4, condition 6.4, all commercial uses for the site. So while the trip generation count and everything is about a childcare center, we do want to preserve all commercial uses, not excluded by the original PD, for the site.
All right, well, since
Ongoing.
we're clearly doing this now, so but the use is proposed as you propose it. I understand how the condition is written, but as you propose it, my question to you prior was, will the 12,500 square foot building be used completely as a childcare center?
I can only tell you that I represent the applicant, the property owner, and that as to the site, the approval, we're not in the building permit stage here. We're at site approval.
Just as you propose it now, I understand that the zoning condition allows all CN uses with the exclusion of a handful of uses.
We'd like to preserve all of the CN uses that are allowed on the original.
Understood. Okay. All right, let's go back to where we were. So I have two people signed up to testify in support virtually. The first one is David Stonicki. No, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I apologize. All right, the second one is Ryan Renardo. All right, then is there anyone else that would like to testify in support that's here? All right, then now we'll go to opposition. Is there anyone in person in the building that would like to testify in opposition? Yes, sir, please come forward.
Good evening, Madam Zoning Hearing Master. My name is Matt Newton. I represent Mariposa Homeowner Association. I'm an attorney at Shoemaker, Loop and Kendrick, 101 East Kennedy here in Tampa, Suite 2800. I am the attorney that had been referenced who had submitted written testimony in the record. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to primarily just refer to that as you prepare your recommendation. We have a letter dated March 30th, 2020. July 27th, 2020, and then today I'm going to hand deliver another letter into the record dated today, August 3rd, 2020. And I just want to generally say that the Homeowners Association is not opposed to a daycare center. We just want to make sure that it's done correctly, that the traffic generation of a 7,500 square foot structure and the traffic generation of a 200 student daycare center is accurately reflected to the Board of County Commissioners and properly analyzed during this process. I am not a traffic engineer, as Mr. Razor pointed out, but I am a land use attorney. I've been doing land use law since I began practicing in 2014. And this application just doesn't seem ready to go yet. But as you prepare that review of the written record, please carefully review the evidence submitted, and I'm happy to answer any questions during my time.
Just one question. I haven't reviewed your correspondence, but I will. Is there also included an analysis by a professional transportation engineer comparing the data?
There's not an analysis done by a licensed sealed traffic report as Mr. Razor would have prepared. There is copies of the IT transportation. There is trip generation done through the software. And ITE is generally, as Mr. Razor said, the cornerstone of traffic trip generation analysis, but not a licensed sealed traffic study.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. Is there anyone else in person in the building that would like to testify in opposition to the application? All right, seeing none, then I have a couple of people signed up virtually. The first is Vivian Yates. Second would be Eric Jablon.
Present. My name is Eric Jablon, 10435 Alcom Blue, and I'm the HOA president of Mariposa. This proposed major modification for an increase in density will have a detrimental impact on our community as Mariposa shares our only easement with this proposed facility. Mariposa is a community of 189 single-family homes with 2 to 4 vehicles on average per home. We have a single entrance and exit point for the entire community. With the request to increase the density, this will allow for 200 students plus staff and vendors that all have to share our only easement. The proposed facility of a daycare center will have high peak drop-off and pickup times that also coincide with our community peak entrance and exit times. This facility, with an increase in density, has the possibility to block our only entrance and exit way and create a major safety concern. There is nothing worse than the possibility of being blocked from your own home with the traffic and backup from this facility. There is simply not enough space inside our easement to support this increase in density. We are not opposed to the facility. We simply request that if the density is to be approved, that they do not use our easement. We are willing to provide the applicant pending a community vote free land to expand their property to allow their own easement to be built. We are asking for Cardera access to be removed. We look forward to working with the developer to resolve these issues, which we have yet to sit down and discuss with them since the initial discussion when all this first started. The facility has the power to truly change.
Hello,
the
Madam Hearing
character of
Officer,
the-
may I interject? Ms. Finch, can I interject? This is Cameron Clark.
I'll finish up. This facility has
Hearing
the
Officer,
power to
can-
change the character of our
Mr.
community.
Javelin.
Mr. Javelin, if you could hold your testimony, the Assistant County Attorney would like to comment for a moment.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be testifying under oath. The notice for this hearing is sworn testimony. We need to be able to see and hear you. I don't see any call-in numbers for this. Are you able to be seen, sir?
Yeah, I can.
Can you turn the camera on? Can you turn the camera on your device so we can see you while you speak?
Yeah, sure. I'm not the prettiest, but why not? Better?
I see you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead with your testimony, Mr. Javelin.
This facility has the power to truly change the character of our community in a negative way. We ask that you do not approve this modification. And that's it.
All right, then the next person I have signed up is Susanna Mapu.
Ms. Finch?
Yes.
Ms. Finch, can you confirm with the previous
Mr. Javelin,
speaker
you
that
were not
that
sworn in the beginning of the
sworn?
hearing?
I thought I did. Did I not?
Stand and raise your right hand when I swore everybody in.
Yep, I did on my end.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, let's just do it anyway for the record. And Ms. Mapu, while we're at it, were you sworn in the beginning of the hearing? Okay. All right, Mr. Javelin, if you could turn your camera back on and stand and raise your right hand just for the formality of it, make sure we get it. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
All right, so Ms. Mapu is not on. All right, then that's all I have signed up for opposition. Just last call. Anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? All right, then we'll close that portion of the testimony. We'll go back to county staff. Mr. Grady, do you have any additional comments?
Just to note that in response to the revisions provided by transportation, we'll provide you an updated report to reflect those numbers. I would also note that we'll correct condition 7 because condition 7 failed to strike out existing entitlements. It shows the new ones, but it doesn't have the strike through.
So there'll be a revised report.
We'll correct that just to clarify for the record for the conditions, how the conditions constructed in reference to your question about limitations. For condition 6, all scene uses are permitted, excluding certain uses outlined, and it specifically limits the number of child care students to 200. Condition 6.4 then caps total trips for any scene use that's permitted to that 818 average daily trips, 156 a.m. and 158 p.m., which is based on a 200 square foot, 200 student child care center. So at the end of the day, any use on the property is limited to that trip generation. So
that's the overriding factor.
That's the overriding factor. So in response to your question regarding, well, if they did a 200 student child care center where they could do something additional, not because of the condition 6.4.
I understand. Thank you.
Cap that because that's what it would generate that trip. They would max out the trip under that.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification. All right, we'll go back to the applicant who has 5 minutes for rebuttal.
First, I'd like to thank county staff and the county attorney's office for putting up with me the last few months and my predecessors, several on this file. But they've been very helpful, extremely responsive, same day responses, very much appreciated. I wanted to ask you if you had any clarification. I want to apologize if I pushed a bit trying to get that word in, but I was wanting to get that on the record, and I wasn't sure how rebuttal would flow with our new forum here.
No problem.
So are you clear now on us wanting to continue with this?
Yes, I understand what you're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And one point that our client wanted to make is that not only is this expansion important for, a bare bones facility could go on this site, but expansion for student experience, but expansion also for safety. And here we are. There's 2 pieces of plexiglass between you and me. Something that allows more distance between the kids and allows them room is a better product. And I think that's a positive for the community. And then finally, as to Mr. Newton's comments, this application is not only ripe, it's overripe. This has gone through iteration after iteration, probably 8 staff reports, and that's probably a low guess. We have done the work. You have competing traffic analysis to deal with. But I will tell you that while I'm sure Mr. Newton's credentials as a land use attorney are excellent, I've been practicing 16 years as a land use attorney. He's been practicing quite a long time as well, and is well known in the community. But we have a well-credentialed, and Mr. Razor's credentials are of record, well-credentialed traffic engineer who has spoken saying that this will not impede the quality of life in this development or increase the traffic flow. And to that point, I just wanted to say, when you look at what you have in your record, please weigh the credentials of those who are stating what. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. With that, we'll close major modification 19-1173 and go to the next case.
The next item is agenda item D2, rezoning application PD-19443. The applicant's name is Marchetti. The request is to rezone from PD and CG to planned development. Israel Monsanto provides staff recommendation after presentation by county staff. Madam Hearing Officer, before we go into the presentations, I do have a couple housekeeping notes and corrections regarding this particular item. Unlike the other items on tonight's agenda, this item will be heard at the September 8th BOC land use meeting, not October 13th, that the other items were indicated on the agenda. This will not affect your site plan, your report submittal requirements, nor will it affect the oral argument filing deadlines for those watching and participating in this hearing. So all their deadlines remain the same. It's just procedurally, it will be heard at the September 8th BOCC land use meeting. Also, a correction on the agenda. The comprehensive plan category for this parcel was amended recently, and it's ICMU 35. So that'll be corrected on the subsequent agendas going forward to the board. That concludes those housekeeping items, and we can now hear from the applicant. And again, Israel Monsanto provides staff a recommendation after presentation of the applicant.
All right. Thank you so much. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Hello, Elise Batzel with Stearns Weaver here tonight on behalf of Rhythm RD Management. There's not as much space up here as usual. We are extremely excited to be here. We've been working on this project, which is the redevelopment of the University Mall, for almost 2 years. I'm just quickly going to introduce the team, and then we have some documents to enter into the record with your approval.
Okay.
As I said, I'm Elise Batzel with Stearns Weaver. I am here tonight on behalf of Vin Marchetti. He did potentially want to speak to BOCC, so if that's permitted, he might want to say words. He wasn't able to be here because of some medical issues tonight. We're joined by Chris Bowen with RD Management, who is the Chief Development Strategist, David Smith, Stearns Weaver's Director of Planning, Christopher Hatton, our Transportation Engineer. Joining us virtually is Nathan Lee and Alex Shaler with Kimley Horn. I'm not sure which of the two will be speaking tonight. And we also have Pascal Sablin and John Clifford with our project architects S9. You can go ahead. Can you go ahead and start? Oh, it's up?
Is that 3 copies? Yeah, you'd have to. Thank you. No problem. Brian.
Thank you.
Sure.
Madam Hearing Master, this property is 83.62 acres. located north of Fowler Avenue, west of Bruce B. Downs, obviously the old University Mall site. It is within the urban service area and the University Area Community Planning Area. The future land use is the newly created ICMU 35, which received this property was the first project to receive that new comprehensive plan designation. The surrounding parcels are Res 20, office commercial, and to the south, actually, on Fowler Avenue, south of Fowler, is the city of Tampa's jurisdiction. The current zoning is a mixture. The property, as you can see, a portion of the property is an existing PD, and there's also a portion of the property that is zoned CG. Surrounding the property from a zoning perspective, we have a PD and RMC 16 to the north, a PD and RSC 6 to the east. To the south is commercial general, and to the west is also a PD. There is retail, commercial, and apartments developed. The existing entitlements under the existing PD, combined with the existing CG entitlements, allow a range of about 2.5 million to a little over 3 million gross square feet of development on the site. There are a variety of density bonuses and potential, so which is why there's a range. The allowable uses right now include all of the CG uses, including office, multifamily, big box retail, places of assembly, regional recreation, and schools. What we are proposing is truly an urban mixed-use project consistent with the intent of the ICMU 35 district. The ranges of uses will be commercial, office, retail, residential uses, and density will be measured by a maximum FAR of 2.0. Probably the most importantly, and although we don't have time to go over the entire urban design guideline book, there is an urban design guideline in your materials under one of the tabs. It was put together sort of as a vision plan, and I'll talk about this briefly, but I encourage you to look at those very carefully. What we did with staff is we actually took those guidelines and we created implementable conditions to make sure that what you're seeing can actually be enforced in a regulatory manner. So the project goals are to transform the existing outdated mall into a vibrant mixed-use district centered around a diverse retail-driven core. You'll see on the site plan a little bit later that we do have a central core, which is envisioned as a real walkable pedestrian area. Maximize the walkability and pedestrian activity throughout the project. To provide a network of quality programmed open spaces through our conditions, which are listed in condition number 5, there are a number of design criteria that deal with how to bring all of these things into fruition. We also want to create a modern world-class environment for the new innovation-driven uses. Of course, the proximity here to South Florida, the University of South Florida, we're hoping to create this dynamic office environment as well. These are just some examples of projects that create the vision of what we're trying to accomplish with this mixed-use neighborhood. Research, medical office, entertainment, health and recreation, hospitality, and residential, sort of a live, work, and play environment. The building architecture is incredibly important in order to activate the street. And so these are just examples of the types of building architecture that will be utilized to take these design standards and incorporate it into the ultimate development. Extremely important to the development team is the idea of walkable streets. David Smith, our director of planning, will talk a little bit later about the different hierarchy of streets. But in the core, the idea is that there is a very pedestrian-friendly, walkable street environment that sort of anchors and becomes the center of the project. And also incredibly important to any project of this size, over 82 acres, is this flexible public realm. So the idea is not only that you have one park here or there, but that you have flexible public spaces throughout the whole entire development. And finally, we have a condition and a vision for placemaking and public art throughout the development. And again, just some examples of things that may be incorporated into the project. So it really is sort of this Main Street vision where people live, work, and play. To become a little more technical, I'm going to introduce David Smith, our Director of Planning, who's going to talk to you about far more boring things than I just did.
Good evening, David Smith, 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 2100, Director of Development and Zoning for Stearns Weaver Miller.
Excuse me. Ms. Spezza?
As Lisa had mentioned, if we could go to the next slide, this development is internally and externally connected. As you can see in the Tampa's Uptown District, as we call it, it's now called Rhythm. We're strategically located in the Fowler Avenue Opportunity Zone, proximity to the life science campuses, the R&D park, the medical, Moffitt, veterans, multiple uses. This category was put in place in order to take advantage of that location to come up with a truly urban environment. One of the key features of it allows R&D, pharmaceutical manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, production, and all sorts of office uses. Also, is to help out in the multifamily side, it allows for FAR to be utilized instead of units per acre, which, as you know, as a planner yourself, saves a lot of acreage on the property, and we have limited acreage for this plan. When you look at the compatibility and consistency opportunities here and how we comply with the plan, is that policy 16.3 talks about compatible uses being like uses, complementary uses, mitigating potential adverse impacts, and transportation pedestrian connections. Those are all basically set in other objectives and policies of the comp plan as well, regarding the mixed-use policies on connectivity and also cross-access and multimodal opportunities. When you look at this existing plan of development, commercial office, institutional, the various opportunities for research and development, we have those existing uses now plus some in the entire community. We have those in USF, we have commercial uses immediately adjacent to us, and we have them throughout the corridor. So we meet the compatibility criteria on that level. Then when you look at the PD implementing the ICMU 35, the designation was developed and placed on the property for the sole purpose of redeveloping the mall, which is currently on active redevelopment. If you've been by there, you've seen the Sears building has come down, the JCPenney's building is being repurposed. There's already been a cut through made between some of the commercial and the JCPenney's end of the building to have these driveways and circulation patterns starting to be created in the mall. So we have transit, bike, pedestrian, vehicle, and fostering these mixed use. We also have, and I'll show you in the next slide, the proposed connectivity. As you can see throughout the property, the traditional mall is big mall building right in the center of the property with a lot of out parcels. We start to create this grid network that shows connectivity all around. We have multiple connections off of Fowler Avenue, which are the main connections. We have western cross access and opportunity for furthering the grid to the west. We also have existing connections to the east, which also connect to some commercial partners all the way out to Bruce Downs. When you also look at the opportunities for pedestrian bicycle connectivity on the next slide here, you can see we have a pedestrian core. We have identified primary bike routes, secondary bike routes, shared streets, and multimodal transportation. We have multimodal transportation transit stop located on the site. It currently exists, but there's a requirement for additional bays as the project develops. And this is also not too far off of the potential rail corridor that's on just south of Fowler Avenue from the old CSX line. When you look at the next slide, talks about our roadway hierarchy. What we have here is a series of roads that we recognize, the roads coming off of Fowler Avenue are high volume transit access into the site. But as we get into the site, we want the traffic distributed into the walkable streets areas, into the parking structures. So what you'll see that we have a series of 2-lane undivided, and we have 2-lane divided, as well as a 4-lane divided, 4-lane divided being the D streets coming into the property. As you can see, the D streets are only off of Fowler and coming from 19th, which is to the north, coming down into the site. There are a lot of existing parking garages on the north end of the building that will be remained and reused, and that provides great access to them coming from the north. I spoke about the hierarchy of the streets. This gives you a cross-section of the streets that we have. There are a few more, which are some alternatives, but all of them deal with the essential elements. On-street parking and those that you want to have pedestrian uses, door swing areas, bicycle opportunities, and also wide enough sidewalks for a walking environment to build two lines that are up on the sidewalk in a truly urban environment. And right-of-way widths are varied in order to represent that differential of the various uses. Also, one of the things in compatibility is potential adverse impacts. And so on the next sheet, what we have is a graphic demonstrating the transition to adjacent properties. We have a 300-foot maximum height through the middle of the property, and that's the primary corridor, the transportation, the pedestrian corridor that takes advantage of connections University Square Drive, and also the connections coming into the core of the project. Then to the north and the south, those are the 200 maximum height areas, which as we transition away from the center core and up closer to the major arterials and closer also to the multifamily developments on the north and the west. As we get actually on those multifamily developments, we have a 100-foot maximum height within 60 feet of the property boundary, which gives a transition to those adjacent uses. All the other uses surrounding us are commercial development, which we see this project being a catalyst for eventually transition of this entire corridor into this mixed-use urban live, work, play environment. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Christopher Hatton, who's done our transportation analysis, unless I could answer any of your questions. But as you can see, that this project is properly located, well-connected, has multimodal transportation opportunities, and is well planned to implement all the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, as well as the compatibility standards developed by the Land Development Code.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Hatton, and I have been sworn. I am a registered professional traffic engineer with Kimley Horn. I've been practicing transportation engineering for the last 29 years in the Bay Area. We conducted a transportation analysis in conjunction with Hillsborough County, the DOT, and MPO for this site specifically. Transportation review staff had no objections except for the specific transportation conditions. Three of them I wanted to point out specifically. Specifically looking at the studies that will be conducted block by block with Hillsborough County and the FDOT within the PD to assess the transportation impacts as they're developed so that we can assess the existing impacts of the roadway traffic plus what's being proposed block by block to get the most accurate analysis. The second point is basically, as David had pointed out, talked about the transit facilities. There will be transit facilities that will serve both HART and the US Bull Runner. And specifically, there will be a minimum of 4 stops that will be in compliance with the LDC. However, there will probably potentially be more at the developer's option. And lastly, again, as is mentioned very well by David, the project is proposing vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian connections and cross access for both north, south, east, and west. And this project meets the LDC section 6.04.03 requirements for that.
Are the access points the same as currently approved?
Currently correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How much time do we have left?
I have 6 minutes.
Okay, great. I'd like to just introduce Chris Bowen. He'd like to just say a few words about the project before we wrap up.
Okay, and then I just have a couple of quick questions when you're done.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening, Christopher Bowen, Chief Development Strategist, RD Management, 2200 East Fowler Avenue, Tampa 33612. I just really want to thank our team, dozens of team members, both national and local, a really strong local team. I've worked on this for several years, and our investors and our owners have stood with us, and they really stood shoulder to shoulder with us and the whole team and invested millions of dollars to get to this point. And this point is to have this plan that I believe will fully leverage all of the incredible resources that have been developing there that are tech, academic, community related, that now we have a catalyst plan to be very compatible with the community as well as with those innovators. And very, very excited to be here tonight and to present this plan for the Rhythm at Uptown Development. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office.
Just one point of clarification. You asked if all the access points were the same. They are, with the exception of we are adding an additional cross-access point to the west that wasn't there originally.
My question, I didn't phrase it, but my question was to Fowler. If they're all the same, is that I didn't specify that to Mr. Hatton,
Yes,
but that's
and
what I
on the
was thinking.
site plan, there is a condition that talks sort of about this permeable boundary, because right now there aren't really curb cuts. It goes into the city of Tampa. So all of that really is an open access point and will remain that way.
Well, and that was my follow-up question, was that strip that is the city of Tampa, that on the north side of Fowler, how are there intervening uses that are proposed, or is that remaining open? What is the coordination with the city?
Yeah, there are existing commercial uses, and some of those properties are both within the city and within this PD. They will remain and continue to be out parcels unless they're redeveloped. The portion that's within the PD, of course, will be subject to all of the terms and conditions that are part of the PD. And when we go through permitting, specifically for access to Fowler, of course, we'll have to coordinate with not only with Hillsborough County, but with the city of Tampa as
So
well.
any of those uses that straddle the county and the city are not affected by the conditions that you're proposing?
That's correct. Although portions of that property, for example, parking lots there is common ownership, not exactly the same, between most of the out parcels. And so they may or may not be incorporated into the larger project in the future.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Of course. As you can tell, we're all very passionate and happy to be here tonight. One of the things that struck me most is, every land use hearing, you want to tell the story about the project. And our architect said something I thought was very interesting that I wanted to leave you with. That is that the genesis of this project is really rooted in the concept that this is the beginning of a new neighborhood, not a standalone project. You can see the interconnectivity. You can see the conditions. You can see the connection to other uses around the area, both with the mix of uses, the urban architecture, the walkable streets, and the flexible and the interactive public spaces. So the goal is really to create a neighborhood that grows organically, and there is flexibility built in the plans to allow this project to develop over time. So I'm sure we'll be back before you with changes as they come about. We do have many letters of support from Tampa Innovation Partnership, Career Source Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Wave, and from the University of South Florida. We do have support from both planning staff, development services, and from the Planning Commission. And we'll reserve any time for questions or rebuttal. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Development services, please. Mr. Monsanto.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
And so before Israel begins his presentation, we do have revisions of the staff report, which Israel will go over, but I will hand out the hard copies for the record.
Terrific. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. Israel Monsanto, Development Services. The applicant has done a really good job summarizing the proposed project. I will try to stay short on my presentation. The applicant intends to rezone the subject site to develop the project in multiple phases and will consist of 15 blocks as noted in the proposed general development plan. The ICMU 35 future land use designation, the newly created future land use designation, permits development of a wide range of residential and non-residential uses at an FAR of 2.0. Residential uses may utilize units per acre, which are 35 units, or FAR of 2.0, whichever is more beneficial to the development. For the future land use element of the Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan, the ICMU 35 category shall form a regional activity center which incorporates internal roadway systems, building clustering, and mixing of uses. The category intends to foster opportunities for lead work and play developments. The project may utilize the density or FAR bump available under Policy 19.3 to increase its ICMU 35 density and intensity. Conditions are being proposed to benefit from this density or FAR increase. In order to demonstrate compliance with the above, the applicant has proposed conditions that ensure that the project will result in an integrated, walkable, and urban project. The project will have the ability to develop with an interconnected pedestrian corridor system, built-to-line structures, provision of open spaces, and the restrictions of gated internal roadways. Building designs and block layout standards would also ensure an urban and pedestrian-oriented project that promotes walkability. Connections to adjacent sites would be provided as indicated in the general site plan. A main square or civic space located within the central district, half-acre in size, is also being proposed central to the project. The streets will be designated with 4 types, in addition to alleys as shown on sheet 3 of the PD plans. A streets will generally be active, pedestrian-oriented streets. B streets would be a secondary retail street or residential side streets. C streets will be intended as urban boulevards with pedestrian sidewalk protected from higher volume, and D streets will be considered for high volume urban boulevards to support vehicular through the site. A and B streets would cover the majority of the project, which are the streets that promote for more walkable, pedestrian-oriented environment. These streets will restrict maximum building building setbacks and surface parking. And also on A street frontages will be required to be, and parking on A street frontages will be required to be placed behind buildings. Therefore, the streets type would serve as a framework that would establish the development standards and building design standards. The streets and block layout provides a grid-like, interconnected roadway network with links to adjacent sites and roads around the project. Future changes to the layout of the streets would require a modification to the PD in accordance with the provision of the code for changes to approve plan developments. The applicant has requested a PD variation of the buffer and screening requirements, but only internal to the project, and also has requested a waiver from the Land Development Code Section 60101 and Note 8 to eliminate the requirement for an additional 2 feet of setback for every 1 foot of structure height over 20 feet. We have reviewed the variation justifications and submitted by the applicant for section of the Land Development Code 50306, in addition to the waiver request, and does not object to the request. Staff agrees that providing buffers and screening will bifurcate the project into separate distinct uses and sites, which would limit the ability of the mixed use to share infrastructure and work well together. In this case, this requirement is only being removed internally to allow better integration of the uses within the district. Buffers or screening are limited or not found in urban mixed-use projects due to their mix of uses in nature. For the request to remove the 2-to-1 setback and height requirement, staff concludes that many of the surrounding buildings are set back from the PD lines at least 60 feet and are also separated or screened by vegetation and parking lots placed between those buildings and the subject property lines. Additionally, a type B and 20 foot of buffer will be provided around the PD projects as required by the Land Development Code. The PD variation request meets the criteria for approval, and the hearing master's recommendation for this application is required to include a finding whether the requested variation meets the criteria for approval. Staff considers that the proposed rezoning is compatible with surrounding uses and is consistent with the newly approved ICMU 35 designation. A mix of uses will be required throughout the project. For the future land use, the mix of uses will be horizontally or vertically integrated, and the uses proposed are compatible with nearby projects. Planning Commission found the request consistent with the future land use. Transportation reviewed the proposed street types and does not object to the request, and has provided conditions addressing transit facilities, site access, and traffic analysis to be coordinated with the county and FDOT. The area today is a mix of multifamily residential, commercial, office, institutional, research, industrial uses. The project today consists of 2 different uses, which is retail and office, and will maintain those uses at a minimum upon commencing redevelopment of this site. The square footage and residential units will be limited to a 2-point FAR and density permitted by the future land use. Bonuses will be available for a variety of mix of uses. Provision of design standards for the blocks, buildings, open space, and public amenities, as well as the street system link internally to adjacent site and the surrounding street network with access easements for the public use will ensure the project results in a walkable and interconnected urban enclave. No objections were received from reviewing agencies, and based on this consideration, staff finds the request approval with conditions. And as Mr. Grady stated, there are some new updated staff reports. You will see that condition number, condition number 11, we inadvertently left out a portion of the conditions that were originally there, but when we were doing the last final version of the staff report was left out, so it's incorporated in that revised staff report. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Ask you about that, but now that I read it, I understand it, the revision to 11. So no, I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you. Planning Commission, please.
Jawan Haley, Planning Commission. The subject site is designated Innovation Quarter Mixed Use 35 on the future land use map. It is located within the limits of the University Area Community Plan, and it is located within the urban service area. The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject site to a planned development, allowing for a mixed-use development with a maximum allowable intensity of up to 2.0 FAR. The project is also eligible to be considered for mixed-use bonus incentives that would permit an additional 0.50 FAR and up to 50 dwelling units per acre total pursuant to Objective 19 and policies 19.1, 19.2, and 19.3 of the future land use element. The project will consist of 15 blocks. It is not subject to commercial locational criteria. The general surrounding area is characterized by a suburban development pattern. The immediate adjacent area is characterized by an established urban development pattern, with the number of projects in the greater area redeveloping to higher densities and intensities. According to Policy 1.4, compatibility is defined as the characteristics of different uses or activities or designs which allow them to be located near or adjacent to each other in harmony. Compatibility does not mean the same as, rather it refers to the sensitivity of development proposals and maintaining the character of existing development. The proposed mixed-use project is compatible with development within the general vicinity of the subject site and fulfill the intent of policy 16.1, 16.2, 16.3, 16.10, and 16.13 of the future land use element. According to policy 19.1 and future land use element, larger, newer projects proposed in all mixed-use categories shall be required to develop with a minimum of 2 land uses in accordance with at least 10% of the total building square footage in the project used for secondary use. According to the conditions of approval, the developer has currently commenced redevelopment of the subject property as a mixed-use project containing retail and office uses, and commits to having at least a minimum of 2 uses at all times, meeting the intent of policy 19.1. The subject site is located within the limits of the University Area Community Plan. The University Area Community Plan supports developing physical improvements such as landscaping, gateways, sidewalks, signage, and street trees to define community identity per Goal 3. The applicant has agreed to a condition of approval that requires a minimum of 4 gateways to be provided. The applicant has also agreed to providing open spaces within the site for the conditions of approval. The applicant has also agreed to a condition of approval that would require at least 2 of the following placemaking elements to be provided as enhancing features of open spaces within the Plan Development Central District. These placemaking elements include specialty signage, lighting, landscaping, building architecture, and/or public art. The comprehensive plan is supportive of artwork being utilized to enhance pedestrian spaces. The plan also seeks to ensure that the cultural sector is a core component of economic and community development, planning, and programming for the future land use element, Goal 6.1 in the community design component. Planning Commission staff has determined that the proposed project fulfills the broader intent of the University Area Community Plan. The plan seeks to foster a stable, safe, and livable community through physical revitalization, which establishes positive neighborhood identity and provides community design guidelines to achieve a pedestrian-friendly mixed-use area that will serve the needs of the citizens of the university area community. The site plan proposes vehicular access to the site along the property's southern boundary on East Fowler Avenue and the eastern boundary along Rusby Downs, and access is also provided to the north. The application also provides cross-pedestrian and vehicular connections within the site. In order for the application to demonstrate interconnectivity of the proposed uses and satisfy the intent of Objective 19 in the future land use element, and Goal 15 and Objective 15-12 of the community design component, the project will need to provide cross connections to adjacent parcels that can be redeveloped in the future. The project will also need to provide public access through the site. Providing public access can be achieved through a perpetual mechanism that runs with the land. The mechanism will need to effectuate the public's ability to traverse the site and run from east to west on one of the roadways provided on the site plan. Planning Commission staff finds the request would encourage development that complements the surrounding character of the area. However, the project that facilitates infill development and redevelopment within appropriate locations in the urban service area cannot be successfully implemented without sufficient connectivity and guaranteed public access. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan subject to conditions of approval requiring cross connections to adjacent parcels that can be redeveloped in the future. The project will also need to provide a perpetual public access mechanism that runs with the land, effectuates the public's ability to traverse the site, and runs from east to west in one of the roadways provided on the site plan. Based upon these considerations, the Planning Commission finds the proposed plan development consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to conditions of approval requiring the following: fulfilling the mixed use and interconnectivity requirements of Objective 19 and policies 19.1, 19.2, and 19.3 of the future land use elements, fulfilling the access management requirements of Goal 15 and Objective 15-12 of the community design component of the future land use element concerning connectivity to uses external and adjacent to the site, fulfilling the vision and intent of the university area community plan through the provision of landscaping, gateways, sidewalk signage, street trees to define community identity, a perpetual public access mechanism that runs with the land, effectuates the public ability to traverse the site, and runs from east to west on one of the roadways provided on the site plan, and all other conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
All right, we'll turn to testimony in support. Is there anyone in the room, in the building, that would like to speak in support of this application? All right, seeing none, I have 4 people signed up. 2 of them are on the applicant's team, so I'm assuming those are just as needed, correct? Okay, then the first person that wanted to speak in support is Eric Larson.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Master. I was sworn in at the beginning. Wish to thank you and staff for making this meeting possible. I'm going on record supporting this project as one of the best developments in the area. I've lived in the Tampa region for more than 20 years. Apologize, 2515 West North Street is my address. Got ahead of myself there. But I've watched the area deteriorate, and I believe that this will be the rebirth of the university area. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And the last person signed up in support that I have virtually is Mark Sharp.
Good morning, or good evening, Madam Hearing Master. My name is Mark Sharp. I'm the Executive Director of the Tampa Innovation Partnership. Our address is 2200 East Fowler Avenue. My organization represents over 200 businesses, many community groups, 6 key anchors being the University of South Florida, Moffitt Cancer, Advent Health, University Area Community Development Corporation, the VA Hospital, and RD Management. I believe, and I've served for 10 years as a Hillsborough County Commissioner before taking this position, that this is the single most important project in Hillsborough County's history. It's historic. And what Ms. Batzel said in her closing comments about creating a community is absolutely spot on. This project is going to create a place, an urban village, a mixed-use live, work, play district where people throughout the community will have access and be able to fulfill their dreams that we've not yet had. So, Madam, we're honored to support this project and just thank you very much for the opportunity to come out and speak wholeheartedly in support of the Rhythm Project, which will be the heart of the redevelopment of the Uptown District.
Mr. Sharp, can you just verify you were sworn in at the beginning of the hearing?
Yes, ma'am. I stood up and took the oath. Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate your testimony. All right, then with that, we will close testimony in support and ask if there is anyone in the building that would like to testify in opposition. Anyone in opposition? All right, and I have no one signed up virtually as well, so we'll go back to county staff. Mr. Grady, do you have any additional comments?
No additional comments.
All right, Ms. Batzel, then you have 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to present the project. We don't have any additional comments. I did want to point out to you that there is an additional mechanism for connectivity. There is an existing public access easement that runs north to south, which you'll note in the staff report, that provides connectivity to the external community. And as Ms. Haley mentioned, upon complete redevelopment of the project, there will also be one transversing the site from east to west, which will also provide that east-west connectivity.
I saw that was the change 11.
Yes,
the condition
number 11.
I did note that, yes.
Our entire team is here to answer questions. If you have any questions about the design standards, our architects are available virtually as well.
I don't think I do.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, you too, and thank you. And we will then, excuse me, we'll close rezoning 19-1443. And Mr. Grady, I see it's 8 o'clock. We have 2 cases left. Do you believe we should proceed on? Are they short?
I would suggest we proceed on.
All right, well then I'm sure Ms. Batzel will be glad about that. Then let's call the next case.
The next item is agenda item D3, major mod application 20-0310. The applicant is Lise Batzel with Stearns Weaver Miller. The request is for a major modification of existing plan development. Steve Beachy will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening, Elise Batzel with Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson, here on behalf of the applicant tonight. We're also here with Steve Henry with Links and Associate, our transportation engineer, and Clark Lowmiller, our civil and site engineer with our Dura. This is a major modification. The property location is located just west of Simmons Loop Road, approximately 700 feet southwest of St. Joseph's Hospital. It is within the urban service area and the Riverview Community Planning Area. The property is approximately 147 acres. The current zoning is an existing PD from 2006, which was also modified by PRS 19-0317. To the north, as you can see from the map, there is AR, RSC2, and AS1 properties. To the east, AS1 and AR. To the south, PD 061147. And to the west, ARPD, and there is a huge wetland, mostly wetlands, and I-75 as well. The future land use of the subject parcel is SMU 6. You can see that most of the area surrounding this property is also SMU 6, but further to the north, there are areas that are UMU 20 and CMU 12, including the hospital and a commercial activity area. The existing entitlements from 2006 include 203 single-family detached dwellings. This existing development does not meet the policies, goals, and objectives of the comprehensive plan, particularly policies 1.2 and 1.3, which provides that projects within the urban service area should have a density of 4 dwelling units or greater, unless they're environmentally sensitive lands, and the project should also be of at least 75% of the allowable density. The current entitlements are also limited to single-family detached dwellings, and as you know, SMU 6 requires projects over 20 acres to include a second use to have that mixed-use component.
Was this project approved prior to those standards?
I don't know the answer to that. I assume so.
Okay.
The current project overview, I think I missed it. Yeah, there we go. We are adding 6 new points of connectivity, external connectivity to the project. A lot of what is happening here is we're modifying the internal layout and lot sizes. We're adding community gathering spaces. We are increasing entitlements consistent with the policies and the minimum densities found in the SMU 6 policy goals and objectives. We're also adding an alternative land use pocket, which you can see is 14.5 acres. That's going to provide the second use. And within that second land use, there are a variety of uses, which we will talk about. We are not adding any variations. And it's important to note right here that the floodplain and the floodway have changed significantly since 2006. So a lot of the modification to the site plan is to change the plan so that it protects those environmental sensitive areas. Clerk Lohmiller could speak to that if you have specific questions. We are increasing entitlements consistent with SMU 6 from 203 to a maximum of 450 dwelling units. That's consistent with SMU 6 at 6 units per acre. Again, the internal layout is modified to reduce the impact to environmentally sensitive areas. If you see the colored area, you can see where, Clark, is this floodway and floodplain? The blue is the floodway and the green is the floodplain. This alternative land use pocket can be either a nursing home, an extended care facility, a charter school, multifamily residential, or townhomes. This is going to be a long gate dancer road, which will be extended from the north to the south of this property. Again, as I mentioned, there's going to be 6 up to potentially 8 new external points of connection, depending on which alternative use is selected. You can see the alternative use pocket connectivity for the charter school, and then what it would look like if it was one of the other uses, nursing home, extended care, multifamily, or townhomes. Connectivity to the west and south is significantly limited and hampered by the floodway and I-75. Compatibility. This is probably the most important component to talk about in this particular application. This site is located within a developing suburban area within the urban service area. I heard Ms. Haley say during the last hearing that compatibility doesn't mean same as, it means compatible with. And this proposed rezoning would allow development comparable to the approved and existing residential uses in the surrounding area. We've created this color-coded chart so that you could see the prevalence of suburban single-family developments that have been approved or exist within the area. The Planning Commission has found this project compatible with the existing development pattern found within the surrounding area. And they also say that the request would encourage development that complements the surrounding character of the area. The Hillsborough County Planning Commission report says it's consistent with the following plans and objectives. Objective 1, policy 1.3, again, development of lower overall densities because of environmentally sensitive lands. Policy 1.4, encouraging compatibility and maintenance of the character of existing developments and areas. Objective 16, enhancing neighborhoods and communities with compatible uses that transition gradually between different land uses. Again, policy 19.1, which encourages and requires a mix of uses for PDs. We comply with all of those policies and objectives. Planning staff and Planning Commission have found this project consistent and compatible. We're providing additional connectivity. Given the SMU 6 policies, goals, and objectives, this proposal is more consistent with the comprehensive plan than the existing entitlements for the reasons that we set forth earlier in this presentation. We request recommendation of your approval to the BOCC, and I would like to reserve any time left for rebuttal.
Thank you so much.
Actually, may I submit documentation into the record? It's just, oh, we already did.
Yes. she
Never
did.
mind. Thank you so
We have
much.
it, absolutely. Development Services, please. Mr. Beachy.
I think the applicant has done a very thorough job of presenting what this proposal is about and the different elements. I would point out that the one change, the change that is taking place here is there were 1 acre lots on this project previously, and those have been eliminated. There were 1,000 acre lots in this project previously, and those have been eliminated. What it's coming in its place is the single family homes that will be a maximum of 50 to, or have a minimum of 50 to 40 feet width. And so that's how they're attaining the larger density, by decreasing the width of the size of the lots. The other aspect that I would point out is the charter school. There's a condition added to the charter school. They will be required to seek special use approval if the charter school option is selected. Also, the charter school option will be required to make a pedestrian connection to the east boundary of the alternative land use pocket, but not a vehicular connection. And I would echo what Ms. Betzel has mentioned about the change in the density of the area. There are large residential developments to the south, to the east, that fit in line with this project as well. And the roadway, Gate Dancer Road, will be required as a part of the conditions of this development to extend Gate Dancer Road to the south to the project that's located to the south, which is the one that we will be discussing a modification to that PD in the next hearing. So for those reasons, the development is compatible with the surrounding area, and staff recommendation is approvable, subject to the conditions included in the staff report. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you so much. We'll go to the Planning Commission. Ms. Haley, if I could just ask you if you could keep your presentation as close to the 5-minute mark, I would appreciate it. Go ahead.
Sure. The subject property is designated suburban mixed use on the future land use map. The property is located in the urban service area within the limits of the Riverview and South Shore Area Wide Systems Community Plan. The applicant is requesting approval of a modification for a mixed-use development. The proposed modification seeks development of 450 single-family residential lots with lot sizes ranging from 4,400 and 5,500 square feet, and the following list of options as a second use: nursing home, extended care facility, an 800-student charter school, 150 townhome units, or 300 multifamily units. According to Policy 1.4, compatibility is defined as the characteristics of different uses or activities or design which allow them to be located near or adjacent to each other in harmony. The applicant has made provisions to ensure harmony with the surrounding development pattern. The proposal to develop a mixed-use project is compatible with the existing residential density of the area and serves as an appropriate example of infill development, meeting the intent of Objective 16, Policy 16.1, and Policy 16.2, 16.3, 16.8, 16.10 that require compatibility of residential development to the surrounding area. The intent of the Suburban Mixed Use 6 Future Land Use category is to provide mixed-use projects that demonstrate detailed integration and internal relationships of uses on site. As per conditions, the development will be required to provide vehicular and pedestrian internal connections between the uses, as well as provide connectivity to adjacent parcels. Where appropriate, meeting the intent of Objective 19, which states that all development in the mixed-use categories shall be integrated and interconnected to each other. Policy 19.1 requires a minimum of 2 land uses for new projects proposed in mixed-use future land use categories at a certain acreage threshold. In this instance, properties 20 acres or greater. As per conditions, the applicant will be required to meet this provision. There are wetlands present on the property. The Environmental Protection Commission Wetlands Division has reviewed the proposed rezoning. The EPC has determined a resubmittal is not necessary. If the request is consistent, the request is consistent given that there is a separate approval process for wetland impacts with the Environmental Protection Commission. Additionally, a large portion of the site is located within the 100-year floodplain. As per Policy 5.2, Conservation and Aquifer Recharge Element, through the land planning and development review processes, the county shall continue to prohibit unmitigated encroachment into the 100-year floodplain of riverine systems. The site is located within the Riverview Community Planning Area. The site falls within the residential district of the Riverview Community Planning Area. The district encourages residential development that complements the surrounding character and promotes housing diversity. The proposed use meets the vision of the Riverview Community Plan. Based upon these considerations, the Planning Commission finds the major modification consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll turn to those that want to speak in support. Is there anyone in the building that would like to speak in support? Seeing no one, I have, let me call for opposition. So no one is signed up for support virtually. So now let me turn to opposition. Is anyone in the room like to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, I have two people signed. Oh, I'm sorry. Behind the podium. Come forward. Sorry. This room doesn't allow us the view we had before. I apologize. Absolutely. You could start by giving us your name and address, please.
Go first.
We have not gotten sworn in. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
whatever.
All right. Anyone else? Let me swear you in before you
right.
start speaking. Anyone else in the room that hasn't been sworn? You can raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Go ahead.
All right. Initially, when this,
Can you give us your name and address?
I'm sorry, what?
Your name and address to start.
My name is Tom Auda, 6727 Simmons Loop, Riverview.
I see. You're who I had signed up to speak virtually, and here you are.
But
Okay.
we decided with our computer skills, we
We're
decided
glad
this
you're
is
here.
better. We had submitted initially the rebuttal through an attorney and also a letter myself. So you should have that. If not, I've got a copy of that I can give you today. But I guess additionally, I'll start off with just reading it. My name is Tom Auda. My wife and I purchased the late George Simmons home at 6727 Simmons Loop in late October of 2019, with the understanding that the proposed development was intact. We find out soon thereafter that there's a major modification proposed to increase the number of houses directly across the street from us, as she said, from 203 homes to 450. This additional 247 homes comes with substantially reduced lot size. In addition to the 99 additional houses in the additional major modification, and also either the school or nursing home or whatever else would be to the south of us, and other changes. We would certainly not have purchased this house at this price and or at all if we had known about this major modification at the time of our purchase. As my attorney stated in the letter that he sent to the commissioner, to Commissioner White, this major modification goes against Riverview Community Plan. So, if the guidelines of the plan keep getting changed to suit developers' needs, then what is the point of having a plan at all? Would Riverview not be better served by having some additional neighborhoods with custom homes and more land instead of a jam-packed cookie-cutter house that are not consistent with the neighborhood on Simmons Ranch Court, the neighborhood that was developed by Mr. Simmons himself? Additionally, the vision for the property Mr. Simmons sold for the development that is the subject of this, meeting, was to have larger lots, custom homes, and some neighbors have even told me that there was even a golf course proposed and planned. This major modification does not at all sound like his vision now. In this letter I submitted, and my attorney submitted, we cite the massive congestion that is in this area dealing with this major modification. It will severely negatively impact the overcrowding without any real infrastructure solutions. Our quality of life, property values, and potential safety will be negatively impacted as well. Everything spills out to Big Bend, 301, which are already completely overwhelmed. My wife and I do not have the monetary depth or legal and political influences that the developer has. Therefore, I cannot put up the resources to fight this MM like they can. What I am asking for is our elected officials, you guys, to please represent the residents that are presently living there and not the deep pockets of the developer, and ask you to vote down this major modification. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. Ms.
Okay.
Otter, did you want to speak as well?
I would like to speak. Yes.
Absolutely. You just pull the microphone down just to you. Yeah, perfect. And give me your name and address.
My name is Beverly Auda. My address is 6727 Simmons Loop in Riverview, Florida. My husband Tom and I purchased the late George and Sandra Simmons home on October 23rd of 2019. At this time of purchase of our almost 3 acres of land, it was explained to us that sometime in the future, a housing development would be erected across the street from our property, and that it would be of similar size properties as to Simmons Ranch Court, which our home is also on, meaning that it would be closer to an acre. We were looking forward to this type of development that would have improvement, updating the area with custom homes and larger lots. This type of development would have attracted doctors and other young professionals, since we're so close to St. Joseph's Hospital South, thereby enhancing our property values. As commissioners and planners of roads and infrastructure, I am sure that you're aware of the problems that we already have with extreme congestion in our area. We sometimes have to sit through 3 lights on Simmons Ranch Court to just get onto Big Bend. And then we have to go through another light to get onto the interstate, generally 3 times. Sometimes you can't even turn out. Add to this 765 households and a possible school with 1,800 students. That doesn't include staff, with probability that the people that live in the 765 homes have 2 cars each. Sometimes households have more than just the immediate family. They sometimes have extended family, so it could be more than that. This overcrowding of the roadways is not just frustrating, it's a deterrent for residents to live in this area, but is also a potential safety issue. I feel sorry for the ambulance driver who's trying to navigate through the gridlock to get to the hospital at St. Joseph's and trying to save a life. Another problem with overdeveloping in this area is going to be drainage. When developers build this many houses this close together, they generally and usually cut down most of the trees and reduce the retention ponds size, which negatively will impact the drainage and runoff in the surrounding areas. When you consider all the negative impacts that this major modification will create, drainage and runoff, overloading of the roads and infrastructure, devaluation, property values, changing your community plans, and most of all, potentially impacting ambulance and other first responders, response teams. I respectfully ask that you vote no for this major modification. We would have never moved here if we would have known. And George Simmons has got to be just so disappointed. Most of his family lives in this vicinity, and it's just disrespectful. He put in more than 30 years in this community, and this is his legacy. So disappointing.
Thank you for your testimony. If you could please sign in. All right. Anyone else that would like to speak in opposition to this application? All right. No one. County staff, anything further?
No further comment.
All right. Is Mr. Ratliff available virtually?
Yes, hello. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Mr. Ratliff, are you there?
Yes.
Testimony from the opposition, somewhat focused on the traffic and the proposed access of this project and its effect on Simmons Loop. Can you just talk to me about the level of service and the impact of the traffic on that road?
So, yes, essentially, this roadway is currently not on the, it's not a regulated roadway, so it's not captured within the level of service report. I can tell you though that the gate dancer extension is a very that goes through this project.
Mr. Ratliff, please stand by. Mr. Ratliff, you there?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I'll go ahead and just start over. I think I was going too quick. Essentially, the roadway Simmons Loop is not a regulated roadway, and so it is not included in the level of service report, which is why that information was not included in our staff report as well. But what I can tell you is that the Gate Dancer Road extension is on the corridor preservation plan and is a part of the long-range, relief efforts that is going to work in conjunction with the Apollo Beach Boulevard flyover bridge, Paseo Almar extension, which connects Apollo Beach Boulevard and Balm Road, and that's currently, I believe, in the bidding process, and so is anticipated to go to construction later this year. This will, go down to Paseo Almar Road and really kind of act again as a way of getting traffic off of Big Bend Road and really helping to balance the network and address network congestion. But unfortunately, I don't have that.
All right.
I don't have that level of service information for you.
Further county staff testimony will go back to the applicant, who has 5 minutes for rebuttal.
We did reserve additional time. If we do need a little extra time, we would ask.
I'm happy to give you a couple extra minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you. We'd like to start with Steve Henry, our transportation engineer, addressing transportation and traffic issues.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Steve Henry, Links and Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa 33607. I first want to talk about the overall transportation, what's planned in the area. So there are a number of improvements that are planned in the area. I'll just kind of walk through them. This is from the Hillsborough County. This is from the Hillsborough County CIP. This is the first one improvement is the 6 laning of Big Bend Road from Covington Gardens to Simmons Loop Road, including the rebuilding of the interchange at I-75 and Big Bend Road. This one is currently budgeted to start construction in 2021, so right around the corner. And this is actually just, and we'll submit these in the record. This is the actual plans for the interchange. So they're going to rebuild the entire interchange to be able to handle the existing and projected future volumes on the roadway and the interchange. Then what they're going to do is after they got that one under construction, they're then going to do the two ends of Big Bend Road. The west end over to 41, east end over to 301. So when they're done, and this is budgeted to start construction in 2023. So when they're done, they'll have a 6-lane Big Bend Road along with the new interchange. Then what Mr. Ratliff was speaking to is also what's happening in the area is it's the extension of Casa El Mar, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with the area, but if you know where Apollo Beach Boulevard is, this will connect 301 and Apollo Beach Boulevard over the interstate. So this is an east-west road that will allow traffic now that only has Big Bend to go east-west. This will now allow it to go over the interstate. It won't have an interchange, but it'll go over the interstate. And then that is actually started the construction. Plan to start construction this year. And then, so what we're doing is we're kind of connecting the pieces. This is Big Bend Road here. This is Casa El Mar here on the south. This is Gate Dancer, which is currently constructed. And then we're building, in conjunction with the development of these parcels, building the extension of Gate Dancer, Simmons Loop. So what this will do is allow traffic that is currently on 301 and allow a reliever and conductivity for the area to help. In addition to that, we were actually the traffic consultants for the hospital when it was built. And if you'll notice on there, there's a big striped out area. Well, when we planned this, we looked at the extension of Simmons Loop Road. We looked at the full build out. And so what we planned here is the geometry to accommodate the full build out of the area. This property, when the extension of Simmons Loop, that is actually 2 northbound left turn lanes at 800 feet to be able to accommodate that traffic that would be there. So, part of the delay that is there now is there's only one left in there when they put it in. The reality is it's planned for 2 lefts, and in fact, at one point, Simmons Loop will go north, and there's a through lane and then a right turn lane. So the area is planned for the traffic. Geometry is there. The improvements are on their way. So there are congestion today. There are planned improvements that are ready to start construction this year with a number. So that concludes my presentation, unless you've got any questions.
I don't. That answers it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Quickly, before I say a couple of rebuttal points, I would ask Clark Lowmiller to come up and address the issues that the audits had with relating to drainage and other on-site issues.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Clark Lowmiller, 4921 Memorial Highway. I'm with Ardura. Little Bullfrog Creek is an impaired water body basin. So it is going to require actually additional modeling, additional stormwater treatment, and also retention. So to the audience's point, most of the time when you do develop, a lot of times the perception is smaller ponds. But in this case, we will actually be required to provide additional ponds because of the impaired water body. And then also because of the floodplain, we'll also have floodplain compensation ponds down there as well. So, and then the trees, we have to go through the standard permitting process, meet with staff, and so we'll have all the requirements from the LDC to require saving of the trees on site. So I think that should.
Thank you for that testimony. I appreciate it.
Just very quickly, I want to address a couple of points that the audits brought up, as well as a couple of letters that were submitted into the record in opposition. And I'll just go through the points one by one. Mr. Hill, who is Mr. Auda's attorney, and Mr. Auda, sorry, I'm fogging up, did state that the proposal is in conflict with the Riverview Community Plan without providing any factual support for that claim. As you know, you are charged with considering substantial competent evidence. Your staff did state in the Planning Commission report, the site is within the Riverview Community Planning Area. The site falls within the residential district of the Riverview Community Planning Area. This district encourages residential development that complements the surrounding character and promotes housing diversity. the proposed use meets the vision of the Riverview Community Plan. That is substantial competent evidence with respect to the Riverview Community Plan. There was also a claim that this development would reduce the property values compared to the plan that was previously approved. Again, neither the Aldos nor their counsel who provided documentation to you provided any kind of evidence or facts to support that speculation. We did provide a memorandum of law which specifically states and provides the backup cases that lay speculation about potential problems such as general unfavorable impacts, traffic issues, and property values does not constitute substantial competent evidence on its own. There was also a claim that the development will create negative environmental impacts. Again, this is speculation and conjecture, and it's offered without facts or evidence. In fact, the applicant worked very hard with EPC to modify the site plan to further reduce impacts to the floodway and floodplain, to provide more protection for these areas than was provided in the original rezoning. A copy of the EPC comments reflecting the same are part of the record, again, constituting substantial competent evidence for your review. Mr. Stephen Munch, who lives just on the north side of the property, he did submit documentation concerned about a buffer. We work to the north of the property, the northern boundary of the property line. We did work with staff and we did add condition 15, which now provides for an additional 10 feet of landscape buffer along the northern property line to address that neighbor's concern. Generally, a few of the neighbors, either here with live testimony tonight or with letters that were submitted, talked about speculative effects of more density. Again, without providing facts or documentation or evidence to support those claims. As we presented in our testimony, as the Planning Commission staff and Development Services have stated in their report, the proposed development is more consistent with the goals, policies, and objectives of the comprehensive plan. Again, mere desire to maintain the status quo, unfortunately, under Florida law, does not constitute substantial competent evidence on which you can base your decision. Mr. Henry already talked about traffic. I want to talk specifically, the hospital submitted a letter and they were concerned about the Big Bend I-75 interchange. I think he adequately addressed the transportation improvements that are coming, but I did want to remind you that we aren't responsible for considering off-site improvements with our development. In addition, your professional staff reiterates that the developer has been required to extend Gate Dancer Road north and connect to Simmons Loop Road. They further go on to state in the staff report, Simmons Loop Road was not evaluated as part of the 2019 Hillsborough County Level of Service Report. Therefore, the new north-south collector road is anticipated to improve area connectivity and reduce traffic on adjacent roadways, particularly once Paso Del Mar and I said the flyover is complete. In addition, as you know, the county has adopted mobility fees, another reason that we wouldn't look to off-site improvements in connection with this development. With that, we are here to answer any additional questions that you have. We appreciate you tolerating our time tonight.
I appreciate it. I don't have any additional questions. Thank you for that.
Thank
So
you.
we will then close major modification 20-0310 and go to the last case.
The next item is agenda item D4, major mod application 20-0311. The applicant is Elise Batzel with Stearns Weaver Miller. The request is for a major modification of existing plan development. Stephen Beachy will provide staff recommendation after presentation of the applicant.
You're up again. Good evening.
Good evening. Elise Batzel with Stearns Weaver, 401 East Jackson, Suite 2100, here on behalf of the applicant, with Steve Henry with Lincoln Associates and Clark Lowmiller with Ardura. Similarly, this property is located just south of the property that we just looked at under 0310. This property is 70.3 acres. It is southwest of Simmons Loop Road, approximately 1 mile south of St. Joseph's Hospital, also located within the urban service area and the Riverview Community Planning Area. The current zoning of this property is a PD, 061147, recently modified under PRS 19-0314. The surrounding zoning, to the north is a PD. This is suburban single-family development. To the east, also a PD, also suburban single-family development. To the south is a PD, also suburban single-family development. And to the west is an older PD, 040558, as well as the floodway and Little Bullfrog Creek. The future land use of this entire area is SMU 6, including the parcel that's the subject of this application. The existing entitlements on this site are 216 single-family detached units. Again, it does not meet the policies of 1.2 and 1.3, which provide that projects within the urban service area should have a density of 4 dwelling units or greater, unless there's environmentally sensitive areas, and they should be of at least 75% of the allowable density. The current entitlements are limited to single-family detached. It doesn't meet the policy of 19.1, which requires that mix of uses. This project overview modifies lot layouts. It modifies lot sizes. It increases the permitted units to 315 single-family detached, consistent with the SMU 6 policies and densities. It also modifies the internal road network, again, to accommodate the changes in floodplain. We also have added as a second use here a 7-acre park, which would be open to the public as the secondary use within the community. We've also aligned a point of connectivity along the eastern property boundary, which lines up with an adjacent PED for better connectivity. We aren't asking for any variations. The 3 points of connectivity are to the north, the extension of Gate Dancer, which will run through the property all the way to the southern boundary, as you can see. And again, the connectivity to the eastern PD, and that is approved PD 19-0445. There's very limited connectivity on this southern piece. To the west is I-75 and Little Bullfrog Creek, directly to the west. And to the south is a fully developed single-family residential development. Again, from a compatibility standpoint, the site is located within a developing suburban area in the urban service area. This proposed rezoning would allow development comparable to the approved and existing residential uses in this area. The PD to the east is approved for a mix of multifamily, single-family, and commercial entitlements that could be developed with up to 628 units under the current entitlements. Planning Commission did find that our request is compatible with the existing development pattern found within this area, as exhibited on this map. Comprehensive plan consistency is found in the Planning Commission staff report. I won't go over each of these policies and objectives because they're the same as the last application, but they are in the record. I will have Steve Henry just briefly for this application talk about transportation in an abbreviated format, just so that's also information on this application.
All right.
Steve.
Steve Henry, Links and Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa 33607. As I had stated on the previous application, there are numerous improvements that are planned in the area, which include the 6-laning of Big Bend Road, the reconstruction of the interchange at Big Bend Road and I-75, the extension of Pass Al Mar over the interstate, and then also what we're building, which is the extension of Gate Dancer and Simmons Loop. With those improvements, it'll significantly help the transportation system in the area, both from a capacity standpoint, but also a conductivity standpoint. I'm glad to answer any questions if you got them.
I don't have any, but thank you. Ms. Batzel, does that complete your presentation?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
All right,
We'll
thank
reserve
you.
time for any rebuttal. Thank you very much.
Yep. Then we will go to Development Services, Mr. Beachy.
Good evening, Steve Beachy, Development Services. The applicant is requesting a major modification of the existing plan development PD 061147 and was most recently modified by PRS 190314. Notable aspects of the request include modifying the layout of the internal road network. I should mention that EPC did raise concerns about the first The first plan that they submitted, and the applicant went back and modified the layout significantly to address their concerns, and we can still move forward with it, subject to EPC review. The applicant is requesting increase in entitlements from 216 to 315 single-family homes, and again modifying the lot size to minimum of 40-foot lot width. The second use was a major part of our discussion, where they're adding the PD is adding a public park with it's a private park with public access. It'll be privately owned, and there's conditions in the proposed that would memorialize that in the PD conditions, that it would be publicly owned, and there will be signage on Gate Dancer Road to direct people into a public park, even though it is privately owned. I would agree with the applicant's representation of the adjacent PDs, both to the south and to the east, and obviously to the north, which we just discussed. This is compatible with the surrounding area as approved and as proposed. Development of the subject parcels for residential uses will not create any new incompatibilities within the surrounding area. The park will add a nice amenity for the larger area, as well as the residents of the proposed park. For those reasons, entitlements of the subject parcel is compatible with the surrounding area. Staff recommendation is approvable, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Ms. Haley with the Planning Commission, please.
Juwan Haley, Planning Commission. The subject property is designated suburban mixed use 6 on the future land use map. The property is located within the limits of the Riverview and South Shore area-wide systems community plan within the urban service area. The proposed modification seeks development of 315 single-family residential units with lot sizes of 4,400 and 5,500 square feet in a park which will be accessible to the public. 315 single-family residential units on this site equates to 4.4 dwelling units per acre. The development pattern in the area consists of vacant agricultural single-family residential uses to the south, large wetlands to the west, and an approved planned development east of the site with approvals for a mixed-use development with commercial and residential uses. The proposed use of the site would be compatible with the emerging development pattern in the area, consistent with policy 16.3 of the future land use element. The subject property is 70.3 acres in size. Projects 20 acres or greater in the suburban mixed-use 6 future land use category require a mixture of uses per policy 19.1. The applicant is providing the park, designating 10% of the site for the park, meeting the intent of the policy. Objective 19 in the future land use element also requires all development in mixed-use categories to be integrated and interconnected with each other. As per conditions, pedestrian connections will be provided internally throughout the site as well as to the park area. The subject site does not meet minimum density. The subject site does not meet minimum density per policy 1.2. However, the northern portion of the site is within the 100-year floodplain, as well as the Little Bullfrog Creek traverses the northern portion of the site. Due to the site being environmentally sensitive, this would meet the exceptions to minimum density, as the proposed development would have an adverse impact on the environmental features on the subject property. The Environmental Protection Commission, Wetlands Division has reviewed the proposed modification and determined that in the site plan's current configuration, a resubmittal is not necessary. However, if the zoning proposal does change, if the site plan is altered, the EPC staff will need to review it again. The Riverview Community Plan shows the subject site in an area that is designated as the residential district. The district encourages residential development that complements the surrounding character and promotes housing diversity. The proposed use meets the vision of the Riverview Community Plan. Based upon these considerations, the Planning Commission finds the proposed modification consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
This time we'll call for anyone that would like to speak in support. Anyone in support of this application? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? Mr. and Mrs. Auda, I have you signed up virtually. If you'd like to speak in person, you're welcome to. Or not, whatever you'd like to do. Okay.
Once again, Tom Auda, 6727 Simmons Loop, basically the same objections as before. I'm not an attorney, so I didn't come up with the, whether it was within your purview or modification and this, that, and the other. So I was going off of Mr. Hill. And those are what my comments were based off of. In all due respect to the traffic, it's hardly ever what they predict. It's always worse. So living in this area with the traffic, I'm sure he's done all the mathematical studies. However, we just still think that this is going to be an incredible overcrowding and overburden for the infrastructure of the area.
We have pictures of the traffic on
You
a
could,
regular basis.
if you need, if you're going to speak, you have to identify yourself and speak on the record.
Beverly Auda, 6727 Simmons Loop. This will greatly affect our traffic. We cannot be guaranteed of this overpass. It could be, stopped, and then we will have more of an impact. If we have a school that is down the road from there, and then we have more, homes being built than what was planned, it's, like I said, we already have 3 lights. We sit there and wait to go through before we can even get across onto Big Bend. And I know that they've already done some modifications for that turn lane, and it did not help. I mean, it's just that many people, and then if you think of that many students going in that area, and then it's going to be open to the public for a park, that's very interesting. So it's very disappointing.
All right, thank you for your testimony. If you could please sign in. Anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, county staff, any additional comments?
No further comments.
All right, Ms. Batzel, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Just very quickly, reiterated most of the rebuttal in the last hearing. I do have written rebuttal, which reiterates everything that we just said.
Okay.
Also provides all of the case law and copies of the cases for your review. Just one thing to note, I know that it's very frustrating when you move into development and things change. I moved to a home 3 years ago, and my street doesn't even look like the same street. But with change comes opportunity as well. And so we hope this development is an opportunity for more uses that promote the SME 6 underlying policy plans and goals. So with that, I'll submit the rest of the documentation to evidence. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your testimony.
We're available for questions.
I don't have any additional, but thank you. So with that, we'll close major modification 20-0311 and adjourn the hearing. Thank you for everyone's time and effort to put this hearing together.